Tonight we are following the longest journey in all of Greek mythology. Not a journey to conquer kingdoms, but a journey to find the way home. Imagine standing alone beneath a moonlit sky, listening to the endless sea. The waves crash against black cliffs with the slow rhythm of ancient memory. Salt drifts through the cool night air. A distant wind bends old olive trees while thunder whispers somewhere beyond the horizon. Everything feels calm. Yet beneath that quiet lies one of mythology's greatest mysteries. How could the cleverest man in Greece outwit kings, deceive an entire city blind? A monstrous cyclops survive the underworld itself and still spend 20 long years unable to reach the small island where his wife and son were waiting. That is the mystery of Odysseus. His enemies were never only monsters. They were pride, temptation, loneliness, impossible choices, and the sea itself. Every victory carried the seed of another loss. Every step toward home seemed to push him farther away. Tonight you won't simply hear the legend of a famous hero. You'll walk beside a man whose greatest battle was never against Troy, nor against the gods, but against the person he slowly became. Close your eyes, listen to the waves, and let the ancient world return once more. So before we continue tonight's journey, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy exploring these ancient stories together. And if you feel like sharing, tell us your location and local time in the comments so we know where in the world you are listening from tonight. You do not meet Odysseus first as a king. You do not meet him as a warrior. You meet him as absence, as longing, as a name carried by sailors and widows and old songs. Even before you know his face, you know his hunger. Home. That simple word becomes the center of his life. And the cruel irony of his story is this: few men loved home more, and few were kept from it longer. Ancient poets often described heroes through their strength. Achilles was speed and fury. Ajax was size and power. Heracles was impossible force. But Odysseus was something quieter, something harder to define. He was mind sharpened into survival. He was patience wrapped in speech. He was caution hiding behind charm. Even the ancient Greeks struggled to describe him with one word. They called him Polymetis, a man of many counsels, many schemes, many minds. A difficult phrase. It suggests intelligence, yes, but also flexibility, adaptation, the ability to become what the moment demands. And perhaps that is the first mystery. Who is a man who survives by changing? Can he ever truly remain himself? Far from the Greek mainland, beyond trade routes and marble temples, lies rocky Ithaca. It is not grand, not rich, not powerful. Its soil is stubborn. Its cliffs are harsh. Goats navigate slopes where plows struggle. The sea gives food, but also danger. This is not a kingdom of luxury. It is a kingdom that teaches resilience. Every stone feels practical. Every harbour feels earned. This matters because heroes are shaped by landscapes. A child born in fertile plains learns abundance. A child born among mountains learns endurance. A child born on an island learns two truths very early. The sea can feed you. The sea can take everything. Odysseus belonged to that second truth. Even in later centuries, temple traditions remembered Ithaca as a place of hard people and sharp minds. Surviving evidence suggests the island's rulers depended less on wealth and more on alliances, navigation, and negotiation. That world rewarded those who could think 3 moves ahead. Strength alone could not secure survival. So even before you hear of prophecies or gods, the island is already teaching him. Watch, listen, anticipate. Some legends say unusual signs appeared before his birth. A strange stillness in the wind, birds circling against normal migration, dreams that disturbed palace servants. Ancient storytellers loved omens, though historians continue to debate which were later additions. But myths often reveal emotional truth, even when facts blur. And the emotional truth is clear. From the beginning, Odysseus was not expected to live an ordinary life. There is another shadow surrounding his origin. His lineage carries ambiguity. Most traditions name Laertes as his father, king of Ithaca. Yet another tradition whispers a more troubling possibility. Some believed the trickster Sisyphus may have fathered him. If true Odysseus inherited cunning from a man infamous for deceiving even death itself, was this slander from rivals a symbolic story invented later? Or did ancient listeners sense something uncomfortable in Odysseus, that brilliance and deception often share the same roots? No one can know, but the rumour survived. That alone is revealing. Even his bloodline became a question about truth. And already you begin to see what makes Odysseus different. Most heroes in myth move in straight lines. They desire glory, confront monsters, win or die. Odysseus moves sideways. He observes, calculates, waits. His strength lies not in overpowering chaos, but in navigating it. There is wisdom in that, and danger, because the man who sees every angle also sees every risk. Sleep rarely comes easily to such minds. Imagine the young prince walking palace corridors at night. Oil lamps flicker against stone walls. Outside, waves strike harbour rocks in slow rhythm. Servants sleep. Guards yawn beside bronze spears. But somewhere a boy remains awake, listening to wind, thinking. Children shaped by intelligence often discover something painful early. They see what others miss, hidden motives, half-truths, quiet tensions between adults. They learn that words can conceal as much as they reveal. Odysseus would master language, not merely speaking, reading people. That talent would save armies. It would also cost him peace. In later literature, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, favoured Odysseus more than nearly any mortal. That relationship matters deeply, but it raises another mystery. Why him? Why would divine intelligence recognise itself in this island prince? Perhaps because wisdom is not knowledge. Wisdom is perception under pressure. Athena valued disciplined thought, strategic, calm, controlled force. Odysseus embodied those traits long before war made him famous. Yet divine favour in Greek myth was never simple blessing. The gods magnified what already existed. Their gifts often intensified both strengths and flaws. Athena's favour sharpened him, but sharper minds cast sharper shadows, and shadows were gathering. Elsewhere across Greece, kings raised sons for war marriage alliances and inheritance. Powerful houses competed beneath fragile peace. Pride simmered. Old rivalries remained unresolved. Oaths were sworn, promises made, insults remembered. Far beyond Ithaca's shores, threads of fate were tightening. Odysseus could not yet see the full pattern. No one could. But somewhere in the growing dark, destiny had already begun preparing a test unlike any before. Not a test of strength, not even courage. A test of endurance, of identity, of whether a man can suffer years of loss without forgetting who he is. That would become Odysseus's true battle. Not Troy, not monsters, not gods, himself. Because one day, the clever boy from Ithaca would stand before kings. He would deceive enemies, blind monsters, defy seas, speak with the dead, resist immortal temptations, lose friends, lose certainty, lose nearly everything. And still he would keep moving toward one image. A home fire burning in the night, a wife waiting, a son growing older without him, an island of stone and wind. Home. Yet fate is rarely kind to those who desire simple things. Sometimes the gods take special interest in such longing. Sometimes they ask cruel questions. What happens when home becomes memory? What happens when memory begins to fade? And perhaps most terrifying of all, what happens when the journey changes you so completely that home may no longer recognize the man who returns? The sea offers no answer, only waves, only wind, only distance. And far beyond Ithaca, another thread of fate had already begun to move. Morning comes slowly to Ithaca. Before sunlight reaches the steep slopes, the island already stirs with sound. Goats call from rocky terraces. Rope creaks against wooden masts in the harbour. Fishermen push narrow boats into dark water, while mist still clings to the surface like breath. The air smells of salt, damp stone, olive, wood smoke and crushed herbs under bare feet. This is the world that shapes young Odysseus, hard, practical, beautiful in a severe way. Nothing here is effortless. Even survival feels negotiated. As a child, Odysseus learns quickly that Ithaca rewards observation. A careless sailor misses shifting currents. A distracted shepherd loses animals to cliffs. A proud ruler who ignores small signs soon faces rebellion, hunger, or loss. On larger islands, mistakes may be absorbed by abundance. Not here. Here details matter. Small errors become disasters. Small advantages become salvation. Without anyone naming it, the island teaches him the first law of survival: notice everything. He notices more than most boys. He notices when visiting nobles smile too widely. He notices when silence between adults feels heavier than speech. He notices how his father Laertes rarely wastes words. Laertes is not remembered as a conquering king. He is something quieter, steady, weathered, practical, a man shaped by labour more than spectacle. He understands land harvests and the difficult balance between authority and restraint. To outsiders, such a king may seem ordinary. To a thoughtful child, he becomes a lesson in discipline. Yet Odysseus is not shaped by men alone. Ancient traditions often emphasize the influence of his mother Anticlea. She carries emotional intelligence that balances Laertes' austerity. Through her, Odysseus learns something equally powerful: words move people as surely as force. Comfort, persuasion, reassurance, deception language can heal, guide, or manipulate. Some researchers believe this maternal influence explains why Odysseus later excels, not merely in strategy, but in persuasion. He does not only think well, he speaks well. That distinction matters. Many clever men fail because they cannot move others. Odysseus learns to do both. Still, childhood is rarely defined by instruction alone. It is defined by moments, small scenes that remain in memory. Imagine him standing on a cliff at dusk. Wind pulls at his hair. Below, waves strike stone with rhythmic violence. Above, seabirds turn against orange light. He watches a storm forming far beyond the horizon. Most children would see weather. Odysseus sees pattern, direction, timing, probability. He begins predicting storms before others do. Not perfectly, but often enough that people notice. And when people notice intelligence in a child, they respond in different ways. Some admire, some fear, some test. In Greek culture, cleverness held strange status. Intelligence was praised, but excessive cunning created discomfort. A wise ruler protected order. A manipulative ruler threatened trust. The line between genius and trickster remained thin. This tension would follow Odysseus his entire life. Even as a boy, he learns that intelligence must often disguise itself, so he watches quietly. He speaks selectively. He asks questions others overlook. One old story survives from his youth, though details differ. During a visit to his maternal grandfather, the famous trickster Autolycus young Odysseus encounters a very different philosophy of life. Autolycus is legendary for theft, deception, and impossible escapes. He is a man who bends truth as easily as rope. Where Laertes teaches discipline, Autolycus teaches adaptability. Where Ithaca teaches caution, Autolycus teaches improvisation. This matters more than it first appears, because Odysseus is not born purely honourable or purely deceptive. He is shaped by both worlds, order and trickery, duty and cunning, honour and survival. That duality becomes his defining trait. Some myths even claim Autolycus named the child. The name Odysseus itself has uncertain meaning. Some interpretations connect it to anger, pain, or being hated. Another interpretation suggests suffering tied to conflict. Historians continue to debate the linguistic roots, but ancient listeners understood one thing clearly. His name carried struggle, almost as if fate had marked him through language. There is also a story of blood. As a young man, Odysseus joins a boar hunt on Mount Parnassus. The forest is cold and dense. Wet earth softens beneath sandals. Dogs bark in sudden alarm. Then the boar strikes, fast, violent, merciless. Tusks slash flesh before spears land. Odysseus survives, but not unchanged. The wound leaves a scar on his leg. A scar Small detail, enormous consequence. Years later, that scar will identify him when even his face cannot. Scars matter in myth. They are memory written on the body. And this scar teaches him something strength alone cannot. Mortality. Even brilliant minds bleed. Even princes fall. Even careful men cannot control everything. That lesson deepens him. But it does not humble him completely. Not yet. Because alongside intelligence, another trait grows within him. Pride. Not loud pride like arrogant kings. Subtle pride. The pride of being right. The pride of seeing solutions others miss. The pride of believing foresight can overcome chaos. This kind of pride is harder to detect and harder to cure. Ancient storytellers understood this well. A warrior proud of strength can be broken in battle, but a man proud of his mind, he may continue believing he can outthink fate itself. That belief becomes dangerously seductive. Odysseus begins to trust his mind deeply, perhaps too deeply. Yet he is not cold. This is important. He laughs. He forms bonds. He loves home. He understands loyalty. Unlike heroes driven by endless conquest, Odysseus does not dream of empire. He values belonging, hearth, family, continuity. Even as ambition grows, part of him remains rooted in simple human attachments. That human quality is why listeners remember him differently from other heroes. He feels close, recognizable. You understand his fears because they are familiar. Failure, loss, humiliation, exile, being forgotten. And perhaps one fear already lives quietly inside him. What if intelligence is not enough? What if one day he faces forces no plan can control? That fear remains mostly unspoken, but it lingers. Then comes the dream. Ancient traditions mention prophetic dreams surrounding major heroes, and one dream becomes associated with Odysseus's youth. In it, he stands on Ithaca's shore at night. The sea is black glass. No wind moves. No sound comes from birds or insects. Across the water, dozens of distant fires burn. War fires. He cannot see faces, only flame. Then one by one, the fires vanish until darkness remains. Only one fire continues. A single hearth behind him. Home. When he turns toward it, he wakes. Was it truly prophetic? Or a story added later by poets who already knew his fate? No one can say. But the symbolism is haunting. War ahead, home behind, and between them, the sea. Odysseus is still young, still learning, still years away from glory and suffering. Yet fate rarely announces itself loudly. More often it arrives through quiet preparations. Skills learned in childhood, wounds barely noticed, words remembered from parents, small habits that later decide survival. And far beyond Ithaca, in palaces filled with ambition and beauty, another choice was approaching, one involving a woman whose face would one day move kingdoms. Odysseus could not know it, but the age of peace was already ending. Youth passes quietly on Ithaca, but quiet does not mean stillness. You begin to notice how Odysseus changes. His body hardens from climbing stone ridges and handling spears, yet his greatest growth remains invisible. His mind sharpens faster than his muscles. He listens more than he speaks. When older men debate trade alliances or harvests, he says little but remembers everything. The palace servants begin whispering that the young prince sees too much. In ancient courts, that reputation is both compliment and warning. As Odysseus reaches manhood, visitors come more frequently to Ithaca. Kings, merchants, envoys, wandering singers, priests, and sailors bring news from across the Greek world. Through them, he learns a crucial truth. Power does not belong only to the strongest kingdom. It belongs to those who understand relationships. Every alliance contains tension. Every gift carries expectation. Every oath hides potential cost. Odysseus absorbs these lessons with unsettling speed. He starts predicting motives before words are finished. This talent earns respect from his father, but also caution. Laertes begins involving him in discussions usually reserved for older men. At first, Odysseus simply observes. Then he offers suggestions, small ones, practical ones. Reroute a trade shipment before storms. delay negotiations until rival tempers cool, offer generosity now to secure leverage later. Again and again his judgment proves sound. Success builds confidence, confidence slowly feeds pride, and pride often arrives wearing reason. Odysseus does not think himself arrogant. That is what makes it dangerous. He believes he is merely realistic. He trusts patterns. He trusts logic. He trusts that intelligence properly applied can solve nearly anything. Already a subtle belief grows inside him. Chaos can be managed if one thinks clearly enough. The gods, as myths often remind us, tend to challenge exactly that belief. One autumn evening, a seer arrives on Ithaca. The man is old, thin, sun-darkened, his cloak smells of smoke and travel. Salt dust clings to leather sandals. He asks for shelter, and according to sacred custom, hospitality is granted before questions. Fire crackles inside the hall. Olive oil burns in bronze lamps. Outside, the sea wind rises. During the meal, the old man says almost nothing. He eats slowly, watches silently. His gaze lingers on Odysseus more than once. The young prince notices. Of course he notices. Later, beneath moonlight and olive trees, the seer finally speaks. Some versions of this encounter differ. Some scholars believe the prophecy emerged through oral tradition centuries later. Another interpretation survives in temple stories rather than formal epic. Yet the prophecy endured because it captured something essential about Odysseus's life. The old man tells him this: "You will become known across the world. Men will speak your name long after stone becomes dust. But your greatest victory will become the beginning of your suffering." Silence follows. Wind moves through silver leaves. Some prophecies terrify because they are clear. Others terrify because they are not. Odysseus does what Odysseus always does. He questions. What victory? The seer does not answer. What suffering? No answer. Can it be avoided? The old man studies him for a long moment. Then comes the line Odysseus never fully forgets. You will escape monsters, storms, and kings. The hardest thing you will ever face is yourself. Then the old man leaves. No thunder strikes. No divine light appears. Only footsteps fading into darkness. That almost makes it worse, because mystery lingers longer than certainty. Odysseus tells no one immediately, but the words stay with him. At first he tries dismissing them. Prophecies are vague by nature. Priests speak in riddles. Seers preserve importance through ambiguity. Reason tells him not to obsess. Yet reason cannot silence unease, especially when signs continue. Dreams begin. Not every night, but often enough. In one dream, he rows alone through thick fog. No stars guide him. No shore appears. He hears voices calling his name from every direction: his father, his mother, strangers, even voices he does not recognize. Then one voice rises above the rest. Calm, female, sharp as bronze. Choose carefully. He wakes before dawn, heart racing, sweat cold against skin. Ancient Greeks treated dreams seriously. Temples dedicated to divine healing and prophecy preserved elaborate dream rituals. Some dreams were dismissed as noise of the mind. Others were considered messages crossing boundaries between mortal and divine. Historians continue to debate how literally people believed such visions, but emotionally dreams mattered. They gave shape to hidden fears. Odysseus's dreams reveal something he rarely admits. Uncertainty frightens him, not danger itself. Uncertainty. A visible enemy can be planned for, an invisible future cannot. And so predictably, he responds by doing what comforts him most. Preparation. He trains harder, hunts more aggressively, studies politics more deeply. He sharpens speech memory and tactical thinking. If destiny approaches, he intends to meet it ready. Yet beneath discipline lies a quiet contradiction. The more he prepares, the more he feeds the belief that preparation guarantees control. That illusion becomes part of him. Years later, it will both save and destroy. Meanwhile, another relationship begins forming, one not yet personal but spiritual. Athena. Ancient poets repeatedly pair Athena with Odysseus because both value disciplined intelligence over reckless force. Athena is not wisdom as peaceful abstraction. She is strategic wisdom under pressure, tactical thought during conflict, clear perception during chaos. She represents the mind that remains calm while others panic. Why would such a goddess favour a mortal? Some believed she saw in Odysseus a rare mirror. Others believed she chose him precisely because he needed correction. Wisdom without humility becomes manipulation. Intelligence without restraint becomes arrogance. Perhaps Athena did not simply admire him. Perhaps she intended to shape him. That distinction matters, because divine favour in Greek myth rarely means comfort. It means involvement, and involvement from gods changes lives. The signs continue. One morning, an eagle descends suddenly near palace grounds, clutching a snake in its talons. Servants cry out. The snake twists violently, striking upward even as it dies. Both predator and prey bleed before the bird finally rises into the sky. An omen. Everyone agrees on that. They disagree on meaning, victory with cost, power meeting resistance, a ruler overcoming danger but not escaping harm. No consensus forms. Odysseus watches in silence. Again he stores details. Again he searches for pattern. But destiny refuses easy interpretation. That is its nature. Not long after, another realization begins pressing upon him. He is no longer merely a son. He is becoming heir. Responsibility changes ambition. Dreams of personal glory give way to heavier questions. Can he protect Ithaca? Can he preserve peace? Can intelligence truly shield loved ones from forces beyond control? These questions mature him. They also deepen loneliness, because leadership often isolates before power even arrives. Few understand the burden of constantly anticipating threats. Fewer still understand what it costs emotionally. Odysseus begins feeling that cost. Not dramatically, quietly. A pause before sleep, a longer stare toward the sea, a habit of thinking several moves ahead even during meals. The mind that protects also exhausts, and still life moves forward. Peace remains for now, but far away, beauty is already becoming political. Princes across Greece speak of one woman with growing fascination. Kings weigh marriages, alliances shift, pride sharpens, oaths gather weight. Odysseus does not yet know her name will alter his life, but fate already does. Beneath olive trees, prophecy has spoken. Beyond the sea, destiny has begun answering. For a brief and precious stretch of life, fate grows quiet. No wars call from distant shores. No monsters wait beyond dark waters. No gods openly interfere. Instead, Odysseus enters a season many heroes rarely receive peace. And perhaps that peace matters more than any battle, because without it, you cannot understand what he spends the rest of his life trying to recover. You first feel this peace not in palaces, but in ordinary rituals. Morning light across stone floors, the smell of fresh bread and olive oil, bronze cups warming between hands, distant waves rolling against harbour walls, goat herds calling across hills. Ithaca remains harsh, but familiar harshness can become comfort. Home is not always softness. Sometimes home is simply the place where every sound is known. It is during this season that Odysseus meets the woman who will define the emotional centre of his life, Penelope. Ancient sources describe Penelope with remarkable consistency. Beauty is mentioned, yes, but beauty alone never explains her importance. Again and again, poets emphasize intelligence, restraint, patience, and emotional endurance. In some ways, Penelope resembles Odysseus more than anyone else in his world. That may explain their bond. She is not merely loyal, she is perceptive. She understands silence, she understands strategy, she understands what words can conceal. That matters, because Odysseus rarely trusts easily. He admires strength, but emotional recognition affects him more deeply. Penelope sees him, not the prince others praise, not the future king others expect. She sees the restless mind beneath the composed exterior. And Odysseus recognizes something equally rare in her: stillness without weakness. There are several traditions regarding their marriage. Some say Odysseus won her through customary noble arrangement. Others suggest competition among suitors preceded the union. Historians continue to debate which tradition came first, but myth preserves a consistent emotional truth. Their partnership felt unusually balanced. This was not a marriage built only on status. It became an alliance of minds. Imagine their early conversations. Evening firelight flickers across walls. Outside, insects sing beneath warm darkness. Penelope listens while Odysseus speaks of trade politics, storms, rival kings. She does not flatter him. She questions him. Gently, precisely. Where others admire his cleverness, she tests it. Where others accept his conclusions, she probes for weakness. He finds this unsettling, then irresistible. For perhaps the first time, Odysseus experiences something intelligence alone cannot dominate: mutual understanding. Love changes ambitious people in complicated ways. It gives them purpose. It also gives them vulnerability. Before love, risk belongs mostly to the self. After love, every danger expands. Loss gains faces. Fear gains names. Odysseus begins to change. His ambitions narrow. This may sound strange, but it is true. He does not dream of conquering distant kingdoms. He does not seek endless glory like many Greek kings. Instead, his desire becomes deeply human. Rule wisely, protect home, preserve continuity, raise family, grow old with dignity. Simple desires. Yet, Greek tragedy repeatedly reminds us of a cruel pattern. The gods often disturb those who desire simple peace. In time, Penelope gives birth to a son, Telemachus. Everything shifts. A child changes time itself. Suddenly the future has a face. You can almost feel Odysseus holding the infant in silence. The child's breath is warm. Tiny fingers curl around one of his. Oil lamps glow softly. Outside, Seawind moves through the night. The clever prince, the strategist, the careful observer, none of those identities fully prepare him for fatherhood. Love deepens. So does fear. This is essential to understanding him. Odysseus is often remembered as clever, deceptive, resilient, all true. But beneath every famous action lies one dominant emotional force: attachment. He loves intensely. Home, wife, child, father, mother, kingdom. That attachment becomes both strength and weakness. Because what you love most becomes what fate can threaten most effectively. For a while, however, life remains merciful. Years pass in relative calm. Odysseus assumes greater royal responsibilities as Laertes withdraws from active rule. Trade flows, harvests stabilize, alliances hold. The island prospers modestly. No grand monuments rise, no epic songs are yet sung. But perhaps this quiet life is precisely what makes the later tragedy so powerful. He had something real to lose. Not abstract glory, a life, a good life. Then comes the omen. It happens near dusk, sky dimming, air still, no storm visible. A servant notices unusual bird movement first. Ravens gather above the palace in strange numbers, not circling randomly, gathering, watching. Their calls become sharp, repetitive, almost urgent. Even animals on the grounds grow restless. Dogs whine, goats pull against ropes. Then one raven drops. Dead, no wound, no visible cause. It lands in dust near palace steps. Silence follows. The kind of silence that feels wrong. Ancient Greeks paid close attention to birds. Augury, the reading of divine signs through birds, was deeply woven into ritual life. Flight direction calls sudden appearances. Deaths all could carry meaning. Surviving temple traditions suggest ravens often symbolized warning intelligence or messages tied to divine unrest. Priests are summoned. Interpretations differ. That is often the case with omens. But one conclusion repeats. Disruption is coming, not immediate, but inevitable. A bond will be tested. A household will face separation. Distance will matter. Odysseus hears this and feels something rare: helplessness. He dislikes prophecy for the same reason intelligent people often do. It offers information without actionable clarity. If danger has shape, he can prepare. If danger remains symbolic, his mind finds no stable target. That unsettles him more than he admits. That night he sleeps poorly. Then comes another dream. He stands inside his hall, but everything feels wrong. The hearth fire burns low. Tables stand overturned, shadows fill corners. He hears Penelope calling from far away, though he cannot reach her. Between them stretches water, not floor, but sea, endless sea. He tries to cross. The distance grows. Then a voice speaks. Not loud, calm, female. Again. Your greatest enemy will not always strike from hatred. He wakes, cold, breathing hard. The same presence from earlier dreams. The same sharpened intelligence behind the voice. Some traditions later identify this as Athena's first meaningful contact. Others disagree. No definitive account survives, yet mythically the pattern is compelling. Wisdom is warning him, but warning alone does not change fate. Soon, word begins travelling across Greece. A queen of extraordinary beauty stands at the centre of growing political tension. Kings speak her name with admiration, desire, and calculation. Oaths once sworn begin carrying dangerous weight. Alliances that seemed ceremonial suddenly matter. The woman is Helen of Troy. Odysseus does not yet know that her name will eventually tear him from everything he loves. He does not know that his son will grow without him. He does not know that his wife will sleep alone for years beyond counting. He does not know that the peace he now cherishes is already beginning to fracture. He only feels unease. Sometimes fate announces itself, not with catastrophe, but with subtle pressure. Birds behaving strangely, dreams growing sharper, silence feeling heavier. A home suddenly precious in ways difficult to explain. Odysseus stands outside his palace that night. Moonlight washes stone silver. Penelope sleeps inside. His infant son breathes softly. The sea stretches black toward horizons unseen. He watches the water. The water watches back. And somewhere beyond that dark horizon, an oath was awakening. Its consequences would reach Ithaca soon. Very soon. Peace rarely ends all at once. More often it cracks quietly like thin ice beneath steady pressure. Odysseus feels that pressure before he fully understands it. In the months following the omen, ships arrive, carrying sharper news, heavier voices and conversations that stop when servants approach. The Greek world is shifting. Alliances once maintained through ceremony now carry military consequence. Old promises long dormant begin to stir. At the centre of it all stands a woman whose beauty has already become political legend, Helen of Troy. Long before war begins, Helen's marriage had forced Greek kings into a dangerous problem. Too many powerful men desired her. Choosing one risked insulting all others. To prevent bloodshed and oath had been proposed an extraordinary pact among the suitors. Every man seeking Helen's hand would swear to defend the chosen husband against any future insult or theft. It was a clever solution, and according to many traditions, it was Odysseus who helped devise it. That detail matters deeply. Even before Troy, his mind already shaped the fate of kings. Ancient storytellers preserved this irony with almost cruel elegance. The very intelligence that prevented immediate conflict helped guarantee future war. Odysseus solving one political crisis unknowingly helped build the mechanism that would one day drag him from home. A perfect mythic pattern, success creating future suffering. The chosen husband becomes Menelaus. Peace seems secured. Years pass. Children are born. Kingdoms stabilize. The oath becomes memory. Until it doesn't. Then comes the news. Paris has taken Helen to Troy. Whether Helen was abducted, seduced, persuaded, or willingly departed remains one of mythology's oldest unresolved questions. Ancient traditions disagree sharply. Some portray theft, others romance. Some suggest divine manipulation beyond mortal control. Historians and literary scholars continue debating which interpretation reflects older oral tradition. For Odysseus, the distinction barely matters. The oath has awakened, and oaths in heroic Greece are rarely optional. Messengers arrive at Ithaca, carrying formal summons from powerful rulers, especially Agamemnon. Ships are being assembled, kings are being called. Every sworn lord must honor his promise. War is coming. Troy waits across the sea. Odysseus listens, says little. Inside, conflict erupts. This is one of the most revealing moments in his life, because unlike many heroes, Odysseus does not hunger for war. He sees what others romanticize. Glory sounds beautiful in songs. In reality, war consumes time, blood inheritance, and sons. He has a wife, a child, a kingdom, responsibilities rooted in real human bonds. He understands what leaving means, and he does not want to go. This is essential. Odysseus's greatness is not built on loving battle. It is built on enduring what duty demands despite resistance. That resistance leads to one of mythology's most famous acts of deception or desperation, perhaps both. When recruiters approach Ithaca, Odysseus attempts something extraordinary. He pretends to be mad. Ancient sources describe the scene vividly. He yokes an ox and a donkey together, an absurd pairing, because they pull unevenly. Then he ploughs a field while scattering salt instead of seed. Salt ruins soil. No rational farmer would do this. The performance is deliberate, public, strange enough to convince witnesses that the king has lost his mind. It is brilliant and heartbreaking, because behind the deception lies raw fear. He is trying to stay, trying to protect what he loves, trying to outthink fate. For a moment, the scheme works. Observers hesitate. Has the clever king truly gone mad? Then comes Palamedes. Palamedes is no fool. He suspects performance. Intelligence recognizes intelligence. To test Odysseus, he takes infant Telemachus and places the child directly in the plough's path. The field goes silent. Dust drifts. Salt falls from Odysseus's hand. One more step would kill his son. He stops instantly. Madness collapses. The deception is exposed. This scene reveals almost everything about Odysseus. His cunning, his willingness to deceive, his desperate love, and one crucial limit. He will sacrifice reputation. He will manipulate appearances. But when forced to choose between strategy and family, family wins. Always. Palamedes smiles. The test is complete. Odysseus is sane and bound. Some later traditions claim Odysseus never forgave Palamedes for this humiliation. If true, that resentment would create consequences years later. Greek myth often remembers insults with terrifying patience. Nothing disappears. Everything waits. When the recruiters depart, the reality becomes unavoidable. He must go to war. Now comes a quieter tragedy. The farewell. Myths often rush past departures toward famous battles, but emotionally departures matter most. Imagine the final night before sailing. Oil lamps burn low. Sea wind slips through shutters. Penelope sits beside him in silence. No speech feels adequate. What words can prepare two people for separation, measured not in days but unknown years? Odysseus likely speaks in promises. Return soon. Protect the kingdom. Raise our son. Wait for me. Simple promises. Human promises. Promises made before fate reveals its cruelty. Penelope, perhaps more perceptive than anyone, understands something painful. She knows war changes men even when they survive. The husband leaving may not be the husband who returns. If he returns, that possibility remains unspoken, but present. The emotional weight here cannot be overstated. Odysseus's greatest desire has always been stability, continuity, home. Yet the oath forces him into the opposite condition: distance, uncertainty, violence. This tension becomes the engine of his life. Every future decision traces back to this fracture. At dawn, ships wait in harbour. Bronze flashes beneath sunlight. Ropes strain. Wood groans. Gulls cry overhead. The smell of tar salt and wet timber fills the air. Odysseus stands on deck as Ithaca begins shrinking behind him. He watches cliffs recede. Watches smoke rise from familiar homes. Watches the life he built become smaller with every wave. Then something happens. An omen. A hawk appears overhead, carrying a dove in its talons. Mid-flight, the dove breaks free, not by strength, but by twisting with impossible timing. It falls wounded but alive and disappears toward land. Sailors murmur. A sign. But of what? Victory through clever escape. Survival despite capture. Wounding without destruction. Interpretations vary. Odysseus says nothing, but he watches. Stores it away. Always observing, always seeking meaning. As Ithaca vanishes beyond mist, another truth settles inside him. He has lost control. For all his planning, all his intelligence, all his attempts to resist fate has moved him exactly where it intended. Toward Troy, toward glory, toward suffering, toward the long road home. And far ahead, among gathered kings and restless warriors, rivalries were already forming. Some would become allies, some enemies, some legends. Among them stood one young warrior whose name would eclipse nearly every other hero of the age. Achilles. Odysseus was sailing toward him now, toward greatness, toward blood, toward the first true test of what separated mind from muscle. The sea rolled on, untroubled, unanswered. When Odysseus first reaches the Greek gathering, what strikes him is not power, but ego. Ships crowd the shoreline in astonishing numbers. Bronze helmets glint beneath hard sunlight. Spears stand in clustered forests of ash wood. Fires burn across the encampment, sending columns of smoke into the open sky. The air smells of leather sweat oil, sea salt, and sharpened metal. Everywhere men talk loudly, kings posture, captains boast. Warriors compare victories not yet won. Odysseus understands something almost immediately. This army is dangerous, not only to Troy, to itself. The Greek coalition is enormous but unstable. These are not obedient soldiers serving one unquestioned ruler. They are kings, princes' champions, each carrying pride, lineage, and ambition. They cooperate because oath and opportunity bind them, not because trust unites them. Every alliance contains rivalry. Every command risks insult. Odysseus recognizes the true battlefield before the first spear is thrown. Managing men may prove harder than defeating Troy. That realization elevates him. Among so many celebrated warriors, Odysseus stands out for what he lacks. He's not the tallest, not the strongest, not the most terrifying in direct combat. Beside towering fighters like Ajax, he appears almost ordinary. Beside the near-mythic force of Achilles, he seems almost understated. And yet the longer he observes, the more indispensable he becomes. Because Odysseus sees what others miss. He watches Achilles before speaking to him. That alone is revealing. Most men react emotionally to greatness. Odysseus studies it. Achilles is magnificent, almost disturbingly so. Young, beautiful, terrifyingly fast, radiating confidence that borders on inevitability. He fights like a storm given flesh, but Odysseus notices something deeper. Achilles burns hot, very hot. Men like that change battle. They also destabilize systems. Immense strength often resists restraint. Odysseus respects Achilles immediately, but not blindly. He understands that raw power and strategic control are not the same thing. This distinction shapes their relationship. Some traditions present mutual admiration. Others emphasize tension. Most likely both existed. Each recognized something the other lacked. Achilles possessed force beyond ordinary men. Odysseus possessed perspective beyond ordinary men. Then there is Agamemnon. Command rests formally with him, but leadership is more complicated than authority. Agamemnon carries wealth, influence, and ambition, yet Odysseus quickly detects weakness beneath command. Pride governs too much of his judgment. He values status intensely. He expects obedience. Such traits can sustain hierarchy during peace. During prolonged war, they generate fractures. Odysseus begins doing what he does best, stabilizing chaos quietly. He mediates disputes before they explode. He reframes insults as misunderstandings. He guides discussions toward practical outcomes. When tempers rise, he redirects energy toward shared objectives. Increasingly, kings begin looking toward him when negotiations stall. This earns admiration and resentment. Because intelligence can threaten powerful men. A warrior defeated in combat loses visibly. A leader outmaneuvered in council loses invisibly, yet feels the humiliation more sharply. Odysseus begins accumulating influence without formal promotion. That is powerful and dangerous. One early episode demonstrates his value. The Greek fleet stalls because winds refuse to cooperate. Days pass, supplies strain, morale shifts, frustration spreads. Priests search for divine explanation. Commanders argue. Rumors multiply. Ancient armies often feared delay more than battle. Delay invites doubt. Odysseus notices something simple. Uncertainty breeds stories. If leaders do not control narrative, fear will. He begins moving through camp, speaking strategically, not lying exactly, not telling full truth either. He restores rhythm, structure, direction. His gift lies not only in plans, but psychological management. He understands morale as resource. This is rare. Many leaders command bodies. Odysseus commands attention, and attention shapes action. Still, admiration from others never fully comforts him. At night, when camp quiets and waves strike shore beyond the tents, his thoughts return to Ithaca. This emotional duality becomes central to his character. Outwardly, he grows more capable. Inwardly, attachment remains active. Unlike warriors intoxicated by war, part of Odysseus remains emotionally elsewhere. Home never leaves him. That constant inward pull gives him resilience. It also creates loneliness, because few around him understand his internal conflict. Some hunger for glory, some hunger for revenge, some hunger for wealth. Odysseus hungers for conclusion, for return. That difference isolates him. Then comes a warning. One night, beneath a sky crowded with stars, Odysseus dreams again. He stands inside a maze of polished bronze walls. Every corridor reflects his own image back at him. Hundreds of versions, each turning different directions, each choosing different paths. Some wear crowns, some wear armor, some bleed, some drown. He tries to identify the real self. He cannot. Then the familiar voice returns. Come. Sharp, female, choose wisely. Every mask becomes harder to remove. He wakes before dawn. Cold, still, the dream unsettles him more than previous ones. Because it speaks directly to something he avoids confronting. Adaptation has cost. The ability to become what each moment demands is powerful. Diplomat, warrior, negotiator, deceiver, leader, husband, father, Odysseus moves between roles with exceptional skill. But roles can accumulate. Masks confuse. Who remains beneath them? This question lingers. Meanwhile, his reputation grows. Stories spread quickly through camp. The king who solved impossible disputes. The man who sees traps early. The speaker who can persuade stubborn warriors. His intelligence becomes both asset and identity. Increasingly, men expect solutions from him. That expectation becomes burden. Because the more often you solve problems, the less people forgive failure. Odysseus begins feeling that pressure. He hides it well, but pressure accumulates quietly. Ancient poets often describe him with repeated epithets: resourceful, cunning, enduring. Those labels reveal admiration, yet they also risk flattening humanity. Resourceful people are often exhausted people. The mind that constantly calculates rarely rests. Every conversation becomes analysis. Every silence becomes information. Every decision branches into consequences. Even brilliance tires. Perhaps this is why Athena's connection to him deepens. Athena embodies disciplined intellect, but she also represents clarity amid overload. Some scholars interpret their relationship symbolically. Athena may represent Odysseus's highest rational potential. The calm mind he strives to maintain when emotion threatens balance. If so, her favor is not merely divine blessing, it is psychological necessity. Because emotion is building around him, war approaches. Real war. No longer oaths or councils. Blood. Soon Troy will no longer be distant rumor. It will become wars, defenders, screams, and death. And with real battle comes the first great test separating Odysseus from other kings. Not whether he can think. Everyone already knows he can. The true question becomes harder. What will intelligence become under violence? Wisdom, manipulation, cruel efficiency? Even Odysseus does not yet know. Far across the water, Troy's walls stand unbroken. Within those walls, princes prepare soldiers, sharpen weapons, and fate tightens its grip. The war has not fully begun, yet consequences are already forming. And somewhere in the threads of destiny, the first compromise waiting for Odysseus had already begun to take shape. War, when it finally arrives, does not feel glorious. That truth reaches Odysseus almost immediately. Songs often compress battle into moments of heroism. Shining bronze triumphant charges legendary duels. Reality feels different. Slower in some moments, faster in others, confusing, loud, intimate in disturbing ways. You smell blood before you fully register death. You hear metal strike bone, with sounds no poet wishes to describe too clearly. Dust rises under hundreds of feet. Men scream not only from pain, but from terror, rage and shock. Odysseus watches the first true clashes around Troy and understands something that changes him. War punishes illusion. No strategy survives untouched by chaos. No plan fully controls fear. No intelligence prevents every loss. That realization does not break him. It hardens him. At first, he fights as a king among kings, brave, disciplined, capable. Ancient tradition never portrays Odysseus as cowardly. This matters because later generations sometimes mistake cunning for avoidance. That is false. He enters battle. He kills. He risks death. He simply refuses to worship direct force as the only path to victory. And very quickly he sees why. Troy is formidable. Its walls loom high above the plain pale stone burning beneath sunlight. Archers line defensive positions. Gates remain disciplined. Supply routes hold. The Trojans are not disorganized prey waiting to collapse. They are skilled defenders with leadership, pride and endurance. At the center of Troy's strength stands one man, Hector. If Achilles burns like wildfire, Hector feels like an anchored fortress, responsible, disciplined, protective. Odysseus recognizes his value instantly. Troy survives not only because of walls, but because men trust Hector. Leaders like that will multiply resistance. The war begins stretching. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. Momentum slows. This is where Odysseus becomes essential. Raw power wins moments. Strategy wins campaigns. He studies patrol patterns, supply movement, leadership structures, morale fluctuations. While others chase heroic confrontations, Odysseus accumulates practical intelligence. Which commanders react emotionally? Which gates change guard at predictable times? Which allies show weak commitment? His mind turns battlefield chaos into patterns, but patterns bring difficult conclusions. Some victories require methods heroic culture dislikes. Ambush, misdirection, psychological pressure, manipulation. Odysseus begins recommending tactics that work but feel morally grey. This marks his first major compromise, because intelligence under pressure rarely remains pure. Here lies a crucial difference between idealized heroes and surviving leaders. Ideal heroes preserve image. Surviving leaders prioritize outcomes. Odysseus increasingly chooses outcomes. At first, the compromises seem small. Spread false information to provoke miscalculation. Delay reinforcement to expose enemy movement. Exploit ritual timing. Nothing shocking. Nothing monstrous. Yet each decision shifts him slightly. War rewards effectiveness. Repeated effectiveness reshapes conscience. Odysseus notices the change, though he rarely names it. One evening after battle, he washes blood from his arms beside the shore. Cold water runs pink into foam. The sun sinks red over darkening waves. Nearby wounded soldiers groan under treatment. Smoke from funeral pyres begins rising into twilight. The smell stays with him. Burned flesh, salt, oil, ash. He closes his eyes. For a brief moment, Ithaca returns to memory. Penelope, Telemachus, warm bread, olive smoke, home. Then the sounds of war return. Memory becomes pain. This is the emotional fracture deepening inside him. The longer war continues, the more difficult emotional balance becomes. To survive prolonged conflict, many warriors numb themselves. Odysseus cannot fully do that. His intelligence prevents easy emotional shutdown. He remembers too clearly, compares too constantly, measures what war takes. That awareness makes him effective. It also exhausts him. Then comes one of the earliest defining tensions with Achilles. Achilles wants decisive force, swift action, direct confrontation. His confidence in strength feels almost divine. Odysseus sees both brilliance and danger in this approach. They do not become enemies, but their philosophies diverge sharply. Achilles believes overwhelming power resolves conflict. Odysseus knows power alone cannot sustain campaigns. Both are right. Both are incomplete. This mutual tension creates strange respect. Achilles may fight harder. Odysseus thinks longer. Each understands the other possesses something irreplaceable. Still, admiration does not erase friction, especially when pride enters. And pride always enters. One night, another omen appears. A meteor crosses the sky. Bright, violent, gone in seconds. Camp falls silent. Even hardened warriors pause. In Greek belief, celestial signs rarely passed unnoticed. Priests debate meaning immediately. Victory warning. Divine attention. No consensus forms. But that night, Odysseus dreams once more. He stands in a bronze field under black sky. Countless helmets lie scattered across the ground. No bodies, only helmets. Empty, silent. He walks forward until he reaches a mirror made of polished shield metal. He looks in. For a moment, his reflection wears his face. Then it changes. Older, colder, harder, eyes sharp, unreadable. The voice returns. You are learning to win. A pause. Then, be careful what victory teaches. He wakes with a chill across his skin. The warning unsettles him because it touches truth he has avoided. War is teaching him efficiency. Efficiency reduces hesitation. Reduced hesitation saves lives. It also reduces moral friction. This is the paradox. Compassion slows action, but absence of compassion changes identity. Odysseus begins living inside that paradox. And then comes betrayal of another kind, not from enemies, but from expectation. As months become years, men increasingly rely on him for solutions. Problems flow toward competence. Failed negotiations. Ask Odysseus. Tactical dilemma. Ask Odysseus. Rival kings arguing. Ask Odysseus. Dependence grows. With dependence comes pressure. He begins understanding leadership's loneliest truth. People admire the solver. They rarely share the burden of solving. Even success isolates. And still Troy stands, unbroken, defiant, its walls almost mocking Greek persistence. Frustration spreads across camp. Morale fluctuates. Small victories feel insufficient. Larger sacrifices loom. Odysseus starts recognizing a darker possibility. This war may not end through honorable combat. It may require something more radical, more deceptive, more unsettling. The thought disturbs him because he senses where his own mind naturally moves. Toward solutions others resist imagining. Toward paths only he may be willing to propose. That realization frightens him more than enemy spears. Because the greatest danger may no longer come from Troy. It may come from what he is becoming. A man shaped by necessity. A man increasingly willing to bend rules for survival. A man learning that cleverness once unleashed in war rarely returns unchanged. And far ahead, hidden within years of blood and bronze, the choice that would define his legend had already begun forming. Not in battle, in imagination. A strange idea. Wood, silence, deception, and a city that trusted victory too soon. By now, years have passed before the walls of Troy. Time behaves strangely in long wars. Individual battles burn with terrifying intensity, yet entire seasons blur together. Summers of dust become winters of cold wind and mud. New soldiers arrive. Old companions vanish. Funeral pyres become familiar. Even grief changes shape. At first, every death feels shocking. Later, sorrow grows quieter, heavier, more internal. Odysseus notices this transformation within himself, and that awareness unsettles him. He has become better at war, much better. That should feel reassuring. Instead, it often feels troubling, because improvement in war rarely comes without emotional cost. Odysseus's reputation has now spread through the entire Greek coalition. He is the man kings seek when ordinary solutions fail. Need intelligence gathering behind enemy lines? Send Odysseus. Need a diplomatic mission to calm rival commanders? Send Odysseus. Need to interpret contradictory motives? Ask Odysseus. Increasingly, his greatest weapon is not spear or sword, but perception. He sees layers others miss. and that makes him invaluable. It also makes him lonely. This loneliness is subtle. Odysseus is not abandoned. He is respected, needed, often surrounded by men. But psychological isolation differs from physical isolation. The person everyone depends upon rarely experiences true ease. Every conversation carries hidden calculations. Every alliance contains secondary motives. The mind never fully stops working, even during meals, even before sleep, especially before sleep. Some nights he lies awake, listening to wind moving across canvas tents. Fires crackle low. Horses shift in darkness. Somewhere distant, wounded men murmur in uneasy sleep. Above him stretches a vast sky crowded with indifferent stars. And in those quiet hours, Odysseus feels something he rarely admits. Fatigue, not bodily fatigue, mental fatigue. The exhaustion of constant adaptation. This is the hidden price of cleverness. People admire intelligence because they see results. They rarely see burden. To think several moves ahead means carrying futures that have not yet happened. Each choice branches into possibilities. Each possibility demands evaluation. Regret begins before action. Fear becomes anticipatory rather than reactive. Odysseus carries that weight daily, and the war offers no relief. One mission captures this perfectly. Greek leadership sends Odysseus on a delicate diplomatic effort requiring negotiation, deception, and emotional control. Details differ across traditions, but the emotional truth remains consistent. He must secure strategic advantage through persuasion rather than combat. He succeeds. Of course he succeeds, but success leaves residue, because persuasion often requires partial truths, strategic silence, carefully shaped narratives, not lies exactly, not honesty either. Odysseus increasingly inhabits grey spaces. At first, he justified such tactics as temporary necessities, but repeated necessity slowly reshapes moral boundaries. This troubles him because he remains self-aware enough to notice it. He asks himself questions few warriors ask. Am I becoming manipulative or merely realistic? Where does wisdom end and deception begin? No easy answer comes. Ancient Greek culture itself held ambivalence here. Clever deception could be admired when used against enemies, but excessive cunning threatened trust within one's own community. Odysseus lives at that edge constantly. Every successful scheme strengthens his reputation while subtly increasing suspicion. Not everyone admires him. Some fear him, some resent him. One of those men is Palamedes, the same man who exposed his false madness years earlier. Their relationship grows colder over time. Intelligence often breeds rivalry when mirrored. Palamedes values cleverness too, but without Odysseus's adaptability, tension accumulates. Some later traditions preserve a darker story. They claim Odysseus eventually engineered Palamedes' downfall through fabricated evidence of treachery. Historians debate this fiercely. Some consider it late invention meant to darken Odysseus' character. Others believe the tradition survives because it reflected uncomfortable truths about political survival. Did Odysseus truly destroy a rival through manipulation? No certainty exists, but the existence of the story matters, because ancient audiences found it believable. That says something profound. They understood his brilliance could cast shadows. This is why Odysseus fascinates across centuries. He is not morally simple. He is neither pure hero nor villain. He embodies uncomfortable human complexity. Intelligence can protect. Intelligence can justify cruelty. Often both occur simultaneously. Even Athena's favour becomes more complicated now. Athena represents disciplined intelligence, but wisdom is not identical to cleverness. This distinction grows crucial. Cleverness solves immediate problems. Wisdom considers long-term consequences. Odysseus excels at the first. He's still learning the second. The gods perhaps know this. Then comes another dream. This one feels different, more vivid, more intimate. He stands inside his own hall in Ithaca. Everything appears perfect. The hearth burns warmly. Penelope sits weaving beside firelight. Telemachus older now laughs somewhere beyond view. Relief floods him. Home. Finally. Then he notices something wrong. Neither Penelope nor Telemachus looks at him. They continue moving, living, unaware. He speaks. No response. He walks closer. Still nothing. He reaches toward Penelope's shoulder. His hand passes through her like smoke. Panic rises. Then Athena's voice fills the room. You may return. A pause. But will you still belong? He wakes sharply. Breath tight. Hands trembling. That question pierces deeper than any omen before, because it touches a fear he has buried beneath strategy. Not death. Not defeat. Transformation. What if survival changes him too much? What if war teaches habits home cannot receive? What if the mind sharpened by constant danger loses the ability to rest? This fear begins haunting him, and with good reason, because adaptation is rarely reversible. The skills making him indispensable at Troy's suspicion calculation, emotional restraint may later sabotage intimacy. He begins missing Penelope differently now, not only with longing, with anxiety. Will she recognize him? Will he recognize himself? Meanwhile, the war worsens. Troy still resists. Even Greek champions grow frustrated. Casualties mount. Resources strain. Great warriors clash, yet decisive victory remains elusive. The coalition needs breakthrough. Odysseus feels pressure building towards something inevitable. Conventional methods are failing. This means unconventional solutions will soon become necessary, and everyone knows who excels there. Him. That knowledge becomes burden heavier than armor, because he senses the shape of future victory. Not honorable duel, not heroic charge, something stranger, something deceptive. Something only a mind comfortable with layered manipulation could fully conceive. The idea is not clear yet, only a shadow, but it grows, and with its growth comes one final omen. A serpent slips into camp at dusk, weaving silently between shields and discarded spears. Men shout. Some move to kill it. Before they strike, the serpent coils around a wooden beam and becomes still, almost as if waiting. Wood. Serpent. Silence. Then it disappears. Priests argue over meaning. Odysseus says nothing, but something inside his mind stirs. Pattern, symbol, possibility. He cannot yet see the full design. Not completely, but the first outline is forming, and once the idea fully arrives, Troy's fate will begin changing forever. The clever king of Ithaca has paid dearly for perception. Soon the world will witness what that perception can build. 10 years. That is how long Troy resists. 10 years of dust-bronze funerals, failed assaults, uneasy alliances, broken truces, and slow erosion of certainty. A full decade is long enough to reshape boys into hardened men, to turn kings grey, to blur the memory of ordinary life. For many warriors, home has begun feeling less like reality and more like dream. Odysseus feels that erosion too. The face of Telemachus in his memory has aged without his permission. His son is no longer the infant he left behind. Somewhere in Ithaca, a child has become a boy, perhaps nearing manhood. That realization wounds him more than battle. Time has become enemy, and Troy still stands. By now, even great warriors understand a brutal truth. The city will not fall through conventional warfare. Its walls remain formidable. Its defenders remain disciplined. Even with losses Troy endures through structure, leadership, and belief. That last element matters most. Cities do not survive long sieges through stone alone. They survive because enough people continue believing survival remains possible. To break Troy, that belief must shatter. Odysseus understands this before others. Victory will not come through force. It must come through perception. The city must be persuaded to destroy itself. That thought arrives slowly like dawn through mist. Not one instant of revelation, but accumulating fragments. Old omens, serpent around wood, dreams of masks, years of studying human behavior. He understands pride, fatigue, hope, relief. He understands something fundamental about exhausted people. Exhausted people want closure, and closure makes them vulnerable. Then, according to ancient tradition, the decisive idea comes. A horse, wooden, silent, impossible. At first glance, it sounds absurd. That absurdity is precisely its genius. A giant wooden horse would serve not as weapon, but symbol. The Greeks would appear to abandon the war. The horse would remain as offering perhaps to Athena. Hidden inside would be selected warriors. Troy, believing victory achieved, would bring the object within its walls. Celebration would replace caution. Then night would finish what 10 years of war could not. The plan is outrageous, risky, dependent on enemy psychology, dependent on perfect performance, dependent on deception so complete it must become theatre. In other words, perfectly suited to Odysseus. When he presents the idea, reactions vary. Some stare in disbelief, some laugh, some admire instantly. Agamemnon hesitates. The plan risks everything. If discovered, the hidden warriors die. If rejected, years of preparation collapse. If Troy burns the horse immediately, the strategy ends in humiliation. Yet alternatives are failing. This matters. Desperation makes radical ideas possible. Eventually, leadership agrees. Construction begins. Ancient tradition credits Epeius as the craftsman guided by Athena. Massive timber is gathered. Wood groans under shaping tools. Hammers strike rhythmically. Sawdust fills the air. The horse rises piece by piece, towering above men. Its shape is deliberate, impressive enough to inspire awe. Sacred enough to invite hesitation, strange enough to generate symbolic interpretation. Odysseus oversees details obsessively. Entry points, interior space, ventilation, balance, timing. Nothing escapes him. This is no longer mere strategy. It feels like culmination. Years of intelligence, patience, deception, and observation now converge into one impossible object. The horse becomes extension of his mind, elegant, layered, dangerous. Yet even genius cannot erase moral weight. That weight arrives through one man, Sinon. Sinon's role is crucial. He must remain behind and persuade the Trojans that the Greeks have departed. His story must withstand suspicion, interrogation, and emotional pressure. Odysseus helps craft the lie. Every detail must feel believable, every inconsistency eliminated. As he shapes the false narrative, something unsettles him. He has crossed another threshold. This is deception on civilizational scale, not battlefield trickery, not tactical misdirection, a lie designed to destroy a city. He recognizes this and proceeds anyway. Why? Because war has taught him a cruel equation. The longer Troy stands, the more Greeks die. If deception ends, more deception saves lives. This reasoning is powerful, possibly true, also dangerous, because necessary logic can justify extraordinary actions. Odysseus knows that. Still he continues. That choice defines him, not because he lies, because he chooses outcome over purity. This is the essence of his character. Then comes the final selection. Only a small group can hide inside the horse. Space is limited. Air is limited. Every chosen warrior must remain silent for hours, perhaps longer. Panic cannot be tolerated. Odysseus joins them. Of course he does. He would never entrust such a plan entirely to others. Night falls. The fleet appears to depart, disappearing beyond the horizon toward a hidden position. Fires dim. Shorelines empty. Silence spreads across what had been a living military encampment for 10 years. For the first time in a decade, Troy sees absence. And absence changes psychology immediately. Within the horse, darkness closes around the chosen men. Wood presses close. Breathing sounds loud. Sweat gathers despite cool air. No one speaks above whispers. Time slows. Odysseus sits in darkness with only thought for company. This may be the most revealing moment of all. No speeches, no commands, only waiting. Waiting forces honesty, and in that silence he feels everything. Fear, hope, fatigue, guilt, longing. He thinks of Penelope, of Telemachus, of Ithaca. He thinks of all the dead, Greek and Trojan alike. He thinks of Hector, of Achilles, of years stolen by war. Then another thought arrives. What happens after victory? For 10 years, purpose has been singular. Win, survive, end Troy. But identity built around survival struggles once survival ends. Who will he become after war? The question lingers. Then comes the omen. Not external, internal. A sensation, stillness, then the familiar voice. Athena, not heard by ears but known. Clear, cold, certain. Victory is near. A pause. Then your greatest suffering begins with success. His breath stops. The prophecy returns. The old seer's warning. Your greatest victory will begin your suffering. Suddenly he understands. This is it. The horse, Troy's fall. The moment destiny has been approaching for years. Triumph and suffering are not separate roads. They are the same road, and he is already walking it. Outside, faint sounds begin rising. Voices, excitement, movement. The Trojans have found the horse. The trap is working. Odysseus closes his eyes in darkness. The city above him celebrates victory, relief, closure, exactly as predicted. And somewhere among Troy's voices, one man still sees danger. One voice warns. One voice resists. But truth, like caution, often arrives too quietly to overcome collective desire. Troy is opening its gates. The horse is moving. The city's final night has begun. The sound reaches Odysseus first through wood. A deep, rolling vibration. Wheels turning over stone. Ropes straining. Hundreds of hands pulling. The horse is moving into Troy. Inside the cramped darkness, every warrior feels the shift. Timber groans around them. Dust falls from the wooden frame. Breathing becomes shallow. No one dares speak. Outside, celebration swells. Music rises. Voices overlap. Laughter mixes with shouting. After 10 brutal years, the Trojans believe the impossible has happened. The Greeks are gone. They have won. That belief is the true weapon. Odysseus sits absolutely still, listening to the city that has consumed a decade of his life. He hears gates opening, wheels crossing stone thresholds. The sound alone tells him everything. Troy has accepted the gift. The walls have been breached, not by force, by trust. Ancient traditions preserve one haunting detail. Not everyone welcomed the horse. One warning voice rose above celebration Laocoon. He urged the Trojans to destroy it, burn it, break it open. His warning became legendary for a reason. It represented reason fighting desire. His famous words survived for centuries. Beware Greeks bearing gifts. But warnings often fail when people desperately want relief. The Trojans had suffered 10 years of siege. 10 years of funerals, fear rationing and uncertainty. Exhaustion alters judgment. Hope becomes intoxicating. Victory becomes emotionally irresistible. Odysseus understood this. That understanding is why the plan worked. Still another warning came. Cassandra saw disaster. She cried out. She foresaw fire, death, ruin. But prophecy without credibility becomes tragedy. Her curse remained merciless. She spoke truth into deaf ears. That detail lingers. Truth had spoken. Twice. And Troy ignored both voices. The city chooses celebration. Night deepens. Wine flows. Torches burn. Songs fill streets. Families embrace. Soldiers lower vigilance. Children sleep. The city exhales for the first time in 10 years. Inside the horse, Odysseus waits. Waiting becomes torture. Not physical torture alone, though cramped limbs ache and muscles burn. Psychological torture. He knows timing must be exact. Too early and guards remain alert. Too late and opportunity fades. Every passing minute stretches like rope under strain. Then silence slowly changes. Music fades. Voices thin. Drunken laughter gives way to scattered murmurs. Doors close. Footsteps lessen. The city sleeps. Odysseus knows. Now! The hatch opens. Cold night air floods inward. Every warrior feels it like rebirth. They emerge one by one into moonlit stillness. Troy lies beneath silver light, peaceful in a way almost unbearable. Houses stand quiet. Sacred fires burn low. Marble glows pale. Somewhere a dog barks, then quiets. The city looks human now. Not enemy, home to families. This matters, because distance makes destruction easier. Closeness restores complexity. Odysseus sees it all, and still moves forward. He signals. Men descend. Knives flash. Guards die quickly. Signals are sent toward shore. Hidden Greek ships begin returning under darkness. The gates are opened, and then the city dies. Chaos erupts with terrifying speed. Sleeping streets explode into screams. Fire leaps from roof to roof. Bronze crashes against bronze. Doors splinter. Smoke fills air. Horses panic. Children cry. Flames reflect in widened eyes. What was celebration becomes nightmare in moments. Odysseus has seen war for 10 years. This feels different, because siege had distance. This is intimate, room by room, house by house, breath by breath. The city burns from inside, exactly as planned. Victory arrives, so does horror. This is where myth often glorifies conquest, but the deeper emotional truth is darker. Even Greek storytellers preserved discomfort about Troy's fall. Too much sacred order was violated. Too much cruelty followed triumph. Victory became contaminated. Odysseus feels that contamination, not because he regrets strategy, because reality exceeds abstraction. A plan on parchment is clean. Its execution is not. He sees old men cut down beside altars. He sees sacred statues toppled. He smells burning cedar oil, flesh and cloth. Heat intensifies. Smoke stings eyes. Somewhere temples burn, and the gods are watching. That matters more than many warriors realize. Greek religion treated sacred space with profound seriousness. Violence in battle was one thing, sacrilege was another. Temples, shrines, altars, these carried divine presence. To violate them invited consequences beyond mortal retaliation. And in Troy, sacrilege comes. One moment becomes especially important. Within Athena's sacred precinct, a terrible act occurs involving Ajax the Lesser and Cassandra. Traditions vary in detail, but all agree on one thing. A sacred boundary is broken. Divine order is violated. Athena does not forget. Neither do the gods. Odysseus senses the shift even before formal signs appear. Something in the night changes. Not visually, atmospherically, as if triumph has acquired shadow. As if victory has crossed an invisible line. Then fire reflects in polished bronze, and suddenly he sees himself. Helmet, blood, ash, eyes hard, unreadable. For a brief second, memory collides with present. The dream, the bronze reflection, the colder face. He is looking at it now. Himself, changed. The realization lands heavily. He won, and something within him has altered. This is the prophecy unfolding. Great victory, beginning of suffering, not because gods punish success alone, because success carries consequences, especially success born from deception and sacrilege. Dawn approaches. Troy collapses into smoke and ruin. The once proud city has become embers. Greek victory is complete. The war is over. 10 years ended. Men cheer. Some weep. Some loot. Some pray. Some simply collapse from exhaustion. Odysseus should feel only relief. Instead, exhaustion mixes with unease. He cannot shake the sensation that something unseen has awakened. Then comes the sign. Thunder, low at first, then louder. The sky above Troy darkens unnaturally. Clouds gather with impossible speed. Lightning flashes over smoke. Wind shifts sharply. Ash swirls into spirals. Sailors and priests pause. An omen. No ambiguity this time. The gods are speaking, and they are not pleased. Some priests attempt reassurance. Storms happen. Fire alters air. Natural explanations exist. Yet ancient minds understood symbolic timing. Storm after sacrilege, after desecration, after bloodshed, meaning felt unavoidable. Odysseus looks upward. He understands. Not fully, but enough. The war has ended. His journey has not. In fact, something far worse may be beginning, because battle had rules. The sea does not, and among the immortals, one god now turns toward him with gathering anger. Poseidon. Odysseus cannot yet see the shape of that wrath, but the sea already waits. Patient, immense, unforgiving. Home lies beyond it. So do monsters, storms, temptations, loss, and the hardest trials of his life. Troy burns behind him. The road home opens ahead. At last he can return to Ithaca, or so he believes. But destiny had never promised him an easy return, only a return worth remembering. When the Greek fleet finally leaves the ruins of Troy, relief spreads like warmth after winter. For the first time in 10 years, Odysseus sails not toward war, but toward home. The thought alone feels intoxicating. Ithaca, Penelope, Telemachus, familiar cliffs, familiar wind, the hearthfire waiting in darkness. Every pull of the oars feels meaningful now. Every wave seems to carry promise. But relief creates its own danger. Exhausted men often mistake movement for safety. Odysseus should know better. Part of him does. Yet even he feels the subtle softening that comes after survival. The mind that stayed razor-sharp through war begins loosening under hope. This matters because many of his greatest mistakes do not come from ignorance. They come from fatigue, from pride, from believing the worst is over. It is not. Storms begin early. Winds turn unfriendly. Routes fracture. Ships scatter. Navigation grows difficult. Already Troy's victory feels less secure. The sea does not care about human triumph. It erases certainty quickly. Days stretch into unfamiliar coastlines, strange islands, unpredictable currents. And then comes the island. At first, it appears almost inviting. Green slopes, grazing animals, fresh water. Quiet, too quiet. No visible settlements, no harbour traffic, no temple smoke, no human voices. Only wind moving across grass and distant bleating from sheep or goats. Some of Odysseus's men see opportunity. Food, rest, supplies. Odysseus feels something else. Curiosity. Curiosity has always been both gift and weakness. He chooses a small party and goes inland. This choice matters because it reveals a recurring flaw in him. Odysseus often believes knowledge reduces danger. If he understands something, he can manage it. Usually this serves him well. Usually, not always. They find the cave, massive, unnaturally large. The entrance alone feels wrong. Huge stones lie nearby, far too heavy for ordinary men to move. Inside the cave smells strongly of milk wool, wet animal hide and smoke. Shelves hold cheeses. Pens contain livestock. Large vessels brim with curds and whey. Everything suggests habitation, but not human habitation. His men immediately urge retreat. Take provisions. Leave quickly. Simple. Safe. Wise. Odysseus refuses. That decision becomes one of the most consequential of his life. Why stay? Ancient readers debated this for centuries. Some blamed greed for gifts. Some blamed heroic curiosity. Some saw pride. Others argued sacred hospitality influenced him. In Greek culture, hospitality xenia was sacred. A host was expected to receive strangers with ritual respect. Guests received food before questions. Odysseus may genuinely expect this custom to apply, but that assumption reveals arrogance. He assumes civilization where none exists. He assumes shared rules. He assumes intelligence can negotiate. This is the fatal miscalculation. Night falls. Then the owner returns. The ground seems to tremble before he fully appears. Polyphemus, massive beyond proportion, a giant shepherd with one terrible eye centered in his forehead. His presence changes scale itself. Stones ordinary men struggle to move. He lifts casually. He seals the cave entrance with a boulder so enormous escape becomes impossible. The trap closes. Odysseus speaks first. Of course he does. Even now, language remains his instinctive weapon. He invokes sacred hospitality. He requests guest right. He appeals to divine order, naming Zeus protector of strangers. Polyphemus laughs. The sound is worse than shouting. Heavy, animal, dismissive. The Cyclops rejects the very framework Odysseus assumes. He does not care about Zeus, does not care about law, does not care about ritual. This is crucial. Odysseus's greatest strength fails when shared assumptions disappear. Negotiation requires common structure. Polyphemus has none. Then horror begins, without urgency, without rage, which somehow makes it worse. The Cyclops simply seizes two men, smashes them, eats them. The cave fills with screams, blood-cracking bone and helpless terror. Odysseus watches, frozen, not from cowardice, from calculation colliding with horror. Attack now. Impossible. Kill the Cyclops immediately. Tempting, but fatal, because only Polyphemus can move the stones sealing the cave. For perhaps the first time in years, Odysseus faces a problem with no clean solution. That terrifies him. The men spend the night trapped beside death itself. No sleep comes. Only fear whispers and desperate thinking. The smell of blood lingers thick in the air. Somewhere nearby, livestock breathe calmly, unaware of human terror. Odysseus thinks, faster, harder, every possibility, every angle. Then the plan forms, not through force, through mind. Again, he studies the cave, finds a massive wooden stake, hardens it in fire, waits. Patience under terror becomes his greatest weapon. Morning brings more death, 2 more men eaten. The cost of delay grows unbearable, but now the plan is ready. When evening returns, Odysseus offers wine to Polyphemus. Strong wine from Troy, rich, potent. The Cyclops drinks greedily. 1 cup, then more. Curiosity becomes pleasure. Pleasure becomes drunken weakness. Then comes the question, what is your name? This moment defines everything. Odysseus answers, nobody. Simple, brilliant, deadly. The Cyclops laughs, drinks more, collapses into drunken sleep. Odysseus acts. He and his men drive the burning stake into the giant eye. The scream that follows feels almost supernatural. Polyphemus thrashes violently. Blood and smoke burst outward. Stone walls echo with agony. The giant roars so loudly the island seems to shake. Other Cyclops gather outside. They shout, what happened? Who hurts you? And Polyphemus screams the answer. Nobody is killing me. The brilliance of the trick becomes clear. The others leave confused. No rescue comes. Odysseus has done the impossible. He defeated overwhelming force through language, through identity manipulation, through mind. The escape follows. At dawn, blinded and raging, Polyphemus feels the backs of sheep as he releases them. Odysseus and surviving men cling beneath the animals hidden from touch. One by one, they slip free. They run, reach the ship, push into open sea. At last, safety. The men rejoice. They survived against impossible odds. It should end there. It almost does. Then pride speaks. This is the turning point. Not monster, not trap. Pride. As distance grows, Polyphemus rages helplessly on shore. Odysseus hears the giant shouting. Something inside him shifts. Relief turns into triumph. Triumph sharpens into ego. The man who spent years being indispensable, who engineered Troy's fall, who outwitted a monster, suddenly wants recognition. He wants credit. This desire is deeply human and catastrophic. He shouts back, mocks the Cyclops. His crew panics, beg him to stop. He continues. Then comes the fatal mistake. He reveals his true name, Odysseus, king of Ithaca, son of Laertes. The words leave his mouth, too late to recall. Silence follows. Then Polyphemus lifts massive arms toward the sky and prays, not to Zeus, to his father, Poseidon. The prayer is chilling. He asks not necessarily for death, something crueler. If Odysseus must return home, let it be late. Let it be painful. Let him lose companions. Let him arrive broken. The sea hears. The god hears. Odysseus feels the shift instantly, like cold moving through warm air. The prophecy returns. Great victory. Beginning of suffering. He understands now. Troy was not the end. This moment may have been the true beginning. His cleverness saved them. His pride cursed them. The paradox becomes unavoidable. His greatest strength and greatest weakness are now inseparable. And far beyond the ship, the sea begins changing. The god of oceans has turned his gaze toward one mortal man. Nothing will be easy now. After the island of Polyphemus disappears behind them, silence settles over Odysseus's ships. No one speaks much. The men row adjust sails and avoid each other's eyes. Something has changed. It is not only fear of Poseidon, it is trust. Odysseus feels it even if no one says it aloud. His men know the truth. They escaped because of his brilliance. They are doomed because of his pride. Both things can be true at once. This realization cuts deeper than open blame. Because unspoken disappointment often weighs more than accusation, Odysseus feels shame, not the loud shame of humiliation, the quieter kind, private, persistent. He replays the moment again and again, the mocking words, the name, the prayer. He understands exactly where logic failed, not in planning, not in execution, in ego. For a man who values intelligence, recognizing a foolish act becomes especially painful. Yet the journey continues. The sea offers no time for regret. Days later, fortune seems to soften. They reach the floating island of Aeolus, master of the winds. Ancient tradition describes his domain as strange and almost unreal, surrounded by bronze walls suspended between ordinary geography and divine mystery. Wind sings constantly there. Not chaotic wind, but layered currents as though invisible voices move through the air. Aeolus receives Odysseus warmly. Hospitality returns. Food, fire, shelter, conversation. For 1 full month, Odysseus tells the story of Troy and the horrors that followed. He speaks of war monsters, storms, and longing. Aeolus listens carefully. Perhaps he sees more than he says. When Odysseus prepares to leave, Aeolus offers a gift. A leather bag, sealed tightly. Inside are all hostile winds. Every wind except the gentle western breeze needed to guide the fleet home. The gift feels miraculous. Home suddenly becomes reachable. For the first time in years, hope becomes almost unbearable. Ithaca draws near. Closer, closer. Odysseus refuses sleep. 9 days and 9 nights. He remains awake, guarding the precious bag. He trusts no one else with it. That detail matters. Leadership has slowly become isolation. Responsibility and suspicion now live together inside him. He carries too much alone because he believes only he fully understands danger. This belief contains truth and danger. At last, Ithaca appears. The shoreline, the cliffs, smoke rising from homes. Home, home. After years of suffering, Odysseus can finally see it. Then exhaustion wins. He sleeps, only briefly. But briefly is enough. His men stare at the sealed bag. Whispers begin. Gold, silver, treasure. Resentment feeds imagination. Why would their king guard it alone? Why no explanation? Why such secrecy, fatigue, and distrust complete the disaster? They open it. Instantly the winds explode. The sea erupts. Sails snap violently. Ships spin. Clouds swallow sky. Roaring currents tear them away from Ithaca. Home vanishes. Again, when Odysseus wakes, chaos surrounds him. The sight nearly breaks him. He has come close enough to see home, close enough to smell it in memory, and it is gone. Because of mistrust, because leadership had become secrecy, because his men no longer trusted what he withheld. This failure feels different from Polyphemus. The pride caused disaster. Here, isolation does. Odysseus begins understanding something painful. A leader carrying everything alone may protect information, but he also breeds suspicion. That lesson comes too late. He returns to Aeolus in desperation, begging help. Aeolus refuses, not cruelly, almost fearfully. He now believes Odysseus is cursed by the gods, and no wise man interferes with divine punishment. This rejection wounds Odysseus deeply, not because of practical loss alone, because it confirms growing dread. The gods are against him, and mortals can see it. The voyage continues into darker waters. More losses follow. More men die. Fatigue deepens. Morale erodes. Hope narrows into survival. Odysseus feels command growing heavier with each death. Every face lost becomes quiet accusation, even when no blame is spoken. Then comes another island. Beautiful, lush, still, almost inviting. The island of Circe. If Polyphemus embodied brute force, Circe represents something more subtle. Temptation, transformation, seduction, control through comfort. Odysseus sends scouts inland. They find a magnificent hall surrounded by tame wolves and lions animals that should be terrifying, yet behave like gentle companions. This unnatural calm itself feels disturbing. The scouts enter. Circe welcomes them, feeds them, smiles. then changes them into swine. The symbolism is powerful. Ancient interpretations vary, but many saw Circe's transformation as revelation rather than punishment. She does not create animal nature. She exposes appetites already present: hunger, impulse, instinct. Civilization is thinner than people admit. One scout escapes and returns in terror. Odysseus goes alone. Again, this reveals him. When danger becomes complex, he moves toward it. On the way, divine intervention comes. Hermes appears and offers protection, a sacred herb called moly, capable of resisting Circe's magic. Scholars later debated whether moly symbolized literal divine medicine or mental discipline against illusion. Either way, the meaning remains elegant. To resist enchantment, one must preserve clarity. Odysseus enters. Circe smiles, offers food. Magic fails. For the first time, she is surprised. The balance shifts instantly. Power respects resistance. Soon, hostility transforms into fascination, and then something unexpected happens. Odysseus stays. Not hours, not days, a year, a full year. This fact is emotionally complex and often misunderstood. Was he imprisoned, enchanted, seduced, comforted? Different traditions lean differently. Most likely the truth in myth is layered. Odysseus is not merely trapped. Part of him delays willingly. This matters, because Circe offers something dangerous precisely because it feels good. Rest, warmth, pleasure, escape from responsibility. No storms, no leadership burden, no constant decisions, no dead men to command. Just stillness. Comfort can become temptation when exhaustion reaches the soul. This is why Circe matters symbolically. She embodies seductive delay. The temptation not of evil, of postponement, of saying, not yet, tomorrow, later, I will continue when I am stronger. Odysseus yields to this longer than he admits. That truth unsettles him, because it challenges the heroic image even he maintains of himself. He is not always pushing forward. Sometimes he avoids pain through comfort. Sometimes exhaustion disguises surrender. Then comes the dream. He stands on Ithaca's shore. Penelope waits far away. Telemachus beside her, now nearly grown. He tries walking forward. The sand becomes mud, then water, then deep sea. They remain distant. Athena's voice returns. Calm, sharp. Delay is also a choice, a pause. And every delay has a cost. He wakes instantly, breathing hard. The truth lands mercilessly. A year? Gone. Another year lost. Not to storm, not to gods, to delay. To comfort, to avoidance. Odysseus rises changed. For perhaps the first time since Troy, he confronts a hard truth about himself. Not every suffering came from external forces. Some came from choices. Pride, isolation, delay. The pattern becomes visible. His enemies are not only monsters and gods. They are internal, exactly as prophecy warned. The hardest thing he would face, himself. At last he prepares to leave Circe. But she gives one final instruction. To return home, he must do the unthinkable. He must descend into the realm of the dead. The underworld awaits, and among the dead truths no living man wants to hear are already waiting for him. Few journeys in myth feel as unsettling as this one. Monsters can be fought, storms can be endured, enchantments can be resisted, but the land of the dead offers no ordinary victory. You do not conquer death. You enter it briefly if the gods permit and return changed. Odysseus understands this before his ship even reaches the edge of the world. The sea grows strange as he sails according to Circe's instructions. The air turns colder, light feels weaker, even sound changes. Waves no longer crash with familiar rhythm. They seem muted, swallowed by distance. His men feel it too. Whispers disappear. No one jokes, no one sings. The silence of dread becomes its own presence. Ancient Greeks imagined the threshold of the underworld not simply as a place beneath earth, but as a boundary where ordinary order weakens. Geography becomes symbolic. Direction becomes spiritual. Odysseus sails towards that boundary, carrying offerings, ritual instructions, and fear carefully hidden behind discipline. He reaches the place where rivers of death converge. Mist hangs low. No birds fly, no insects sing. The land smells of wet soil, iron ash, and ancient stillness. Here he performs the ritual exactly as instructed. A trench is dug. Libations are poured, milk, honey, wine, water. Barley scatters into dark earth, then blood, fresh sacrificial blood. In Greek belief, blood restored temporary consciousness to the dead. It gave memory, voice, presence. This idea feels primal and disturbing. Life and death briefly touching through sacrifice. Odysseus draws his sword and waits. The dead come, not dramatically, not with thunder. Quietly, shadows gather at the edge of vision. Shapes without full substance, murmurs without clear mouths. Countless souls press forward toward the blood, hungry, restless, memory seeking form. The atmosphere becomes suffocating. Odysseus, veteran of Troy and survivor of monsters, feels something close to primal terror. Because here, strength means little. There is no enemy formation, no tactic, only mortality made visible. Then he sees someone he never expected. Anticlea, his mother. He freezes. For a moment, his disciplined mind stops working. His mother should be alive. He left her alive. No message warned him. No god prepared him. She stands among the dead. This is the first great wound of the underworld. Not prophecy, not monsters. Personal loss. He wants to rush forward, to embrace her, to ask everything. But ritual demands patience. He must first wait for the prophet he came to consult. Duty restrains grief. Even here, responsibility delays emotion. Then comes the seer, Tiresias, blind in life, seeing in death. A paradox ancient Greece deeply respected. Tiresias drinks the blood and speaks. His words cut with frightening clarity. Yes, Odysseus may return home, but the journey remains cursed by Poseidon. He must control himself, control his men, avoid sacred violation, resist greed. Most importantly, Tiresias warns of cattle belonging to Helios. Touch them and disaster becomes inevitable. The prophecy matters, but what follows matters more, because prophecy gives information, truth gives transformation, and truth now arrives, wearing his mother's face. At last, Anticlea drinks. Her eyes sharpen. Recognition floods them. Odysseus, one word, enough to nearly break him. He asks the question already burning inside him. How did she die? The answer devastates him. Not disease, not violence, not divine punishment. Longing. She died from grief. Waiting, missing him. Ancient poets preserved this with painful simplicity. She faded from sorrow during his absence. No battlefield wound cuts deeper than this revelation. Odysseus survived war monsters' storms and learns that distance itself killed someone he loved. This changes everything. Until now, absence has felt painful but abstract. Now absence becomes lethal. His journey home gains new urgency, not only because he misses home, because delay harms those waiting. This truth pierces him. And then comes one of the most heartbreaking moments in all myth. He tries to embrace her. His arms pass through her. Smoke, shadow, nothing solid. He tries again. Nothing. A third time. Still nothing. She cannot be held. Ancient Greek views of death often emphasized this tragedy. The dead retained memory and identity, yet lost touch, warmth, physical presence. Love survived. Contact did not. Odysseus learns the cruel truth of mortality. Love does not defeat death. It survives alongside it. That realization matures him profoundly. He begins understanding something war never taught. Mortality is not only about dying, it is about irreversibility. Time lost cannot be reclaimed. Childhood missed remains missed. Years gone remain gone. No cleverness restores them. No strategy reverses them. Even Odysseus cannot outthink time. Then more souls come. Warriors, queens, forgotten kings. And then Achilles. Even in death, Achilles radiates presence. Odysseus speaks as many would expect. He praises Achilles' glory, greatest of warriors, honored among the dead. Achilles responds with brutal honesty. Do not praise death. He would rather live as a poor servant among the living than rule all the dead. This moment matters enormously. Greek heroic culture prized immortal fame. Glory justified suffering. Achilles had chosen short glorious life over long obscure one. Now dead, he reveals a devastating truth. Life itself matters more than glory. Odysseus hears this deeply, because, unlike Achilles, he always loved living more than fame. Now that instinct feels validated. Survival is not lesser than glory. It may be wiser. Then another figure appears. Ajax, silent, still angry. He refuses reconciliation. Old wounds remain. Even death has not erased resentment. Odysseus watches him depart in silence. Another lesson. Not all conflicts resolve. Some bitterness survives beyond life. That truth feels disturbingly human. As more souls gather, the pressure becomes unbearable. The dead multiply endlessly. Faces blur into countless stories of loss. Odysseus feels panic rising. Mortality surrounds him in overwhelming scale. Everyone dies. Kings, warriors, mothers, children, the clever, the strong, all. This is the great equalizer he can neither negotiate nor outwit. At last he flees, returns to the ship, breathing hard, hands trembling, changed, profoundly changed. The underworld stripped illusions from him. Glory fades, strength fades, cunning fails before time. Only something quieter remains meaningful. Connection, presence, love, responsibility. This is the wisdom he lacked in youth. Not cleverness, perspective. And with that, wisdom comes terrifying clarity. His greatest battle is not against monsters, not against Poseidon, not even against fate. It is against the flaws within himself that repeatedly create suffering. Pride, control, delay, isolation. The prophecy now feels fully alive. The hardest thing he would face was always himself. As the ship leaves the land of the dead, dawn finally returns. Weak sunlight touches water. Colour slowly re-enters the world. The men breathe easier. Yet peace will not last. Because ahead waits a challenge unlike brute force or seduction. A danger built from desire itself. Voices already sing across unseen waters. The sirens are waiting. When Odysseus leaves the underworld, he is no longer the same man who entered. The change is not dramatic from the outside. He still gives orders, still studies currents, still watches the horizon with disciplined focus. But inwardly, something fundamental has shifted. Death has stripped away illusion. He now understands with painful clarity that intelligence cannot defeat mortality. Cleverness cannot reverse lost years. Strategy cannot resurrect the dead. This knowledge humbles him, though not completely. Some parts of pride remain stubborn. Ahead lies another trial. Not one danger, several, layered, each designed to test a different weakness. Before departing, Circe had warned him carefully. First would come the sirens, then a narrow passage between two horrors, Scylla and Charybdis. One danger seduces the mind, the next forces impossible sacrifice. This sequence matters. Temptation first, then consequence. The sea grows calm, too calm. No harsh wind, no violent waves, only eerie stillness. Even the air feels strangely soft, almost comforting. Experienced sailors distrust such unnatural calm. Odysseus does too. He knows the sirens are near. Ancient interpretations of the sirens vary. Some describe bird women. Others imagined supernatural singers perched on deadly shores. Yet across versions, one truth remains consistent. Their power is not physical strength. It is irresistible desire. They offer knowledge, longing, fulfillment, recognition. They promise exactly what the listener most wants. That makes them terrifying. Because true temptation rarely appears as obvious evil. It appears as intimate desire. Odysseus prepares carefully. He orders his men to seal their ears with beeswax. No sound must enter, no song must be heard. Then he gives an extraordinary command. Tie him to the mast. Bind him tightly. No matter what he says, no matter what he begs, they must not release him. This decision reveals profound growth. Earlier in life, Odysseus trusted himself too much. Now he acknowledges something difficult. Willpower alone may fail. Self-knowledge has matured into precaution. He does not merely resist temptation through confidence. He designs systems to protect himself from himself. That is wisdom. The ship advances. Then the singing begins. Soft at first, almost impossible to locate. Not loud, beautiful, warm, personal. The terrifying thing about siren song is not volume. It feels intimate, as if the voice already knows you. Odysseus hears them and immediately understands the danger exceeds warning. The voices do not promise wealth or pleasure. They promise understanding, recognition, completion. They sing to him specifically. They speak of Troy, of every secret hidden in war, of truths no mortal fully knows, of answers to every unresolved question haunting him. They offer what intelligent minds often crave most: total knowledge, complete clarity, no uncertainty, no mystery, no more not knowing. Odysseus's entire life has been driven by pattern recognition, prediction, and understanding. The sirens weaponize that desire. They sing not to his appetite, but to his identity. Come closer, know everything, end uncertainty forever. His body strains violently against the ropes. He screams, commands release, pleads, threatens. The men row harder, deaf to his desperation. Odysseus experiences something almost unbearable: loss of agency. He cannot act, cannot choose, cannot control. For a man defined by control, this feels like torture. And yet, it saves him. At last the song fades. Distance breaks enchantment. Breath returns. Reason returns. Shame follows. Odysseus slumps against the mast, trembling. He understands something humbling. Without restraint, he would have died willingly. Knowledge itself can become fatal desire. Even wisdom requires limits. But there is little time for reflection. The sea changes again. Wind sharpens. Currents narrow. The channel approaches. Scylla and Charybdis. One side holds Charybdis, a monstrous whirlpool swallowing entire sections of sea before vomiting them back in violent surge. The other side holds Scylla, a many-headed predator hidden in rocks, snatching sailors from passing decks. Circe's warning had been cruelly clear. Choose Scylla, lose a few, or choose Charybdis, risk all. This is perhaps the most painful leadership test of Odysseus's life. Because, unlike earlier challenges, no clever solution exists. No trick, no escape, no perfect path, only damage control. This destroys one of Odysseus's deepest psychological comforts: the belief that intelligence can solve everything. Sometimes it cannot. Sometimes leadership means choosing the lesser tragedy. He says nothing to the crew about Scylla. This decision remains debated. Was silence mercy manipulation, practical necessity? Historians and literary interpreters disagree, but emotionally, the choice reveals painful truth. He cannot ask volunteers, cannot share full terror. He bears the knowledge alone. Again, leadership isolates. The ship enters the passage. Waves crash harder, spray lashes faces. Wood groans under strain. Men row desperately against violent pull. All eyes focus on Charybdis, exactly as Scylla waits. Then it happens. Fast, too fast. A blur from the cliff. Screams. 6 men lifted, gone. Just like that. No duel. No defense. No heroics. Only terror. Odysseus sees them dangling in the monster's grasp, arms reaching toward him, calling his name. That detail destroys him. They call for him, their leader, their protector, and he cannot save them. He watches helplessly. The ship escapes. 6 men dead. Silence follows. Not literal silence. Breathing waves, ropes remain. But emotional silence. Shock. Grief. Odysseus stands frozen. This moment scars him deeply because it violates the identity he most wants to maintain. Protector. He could not protect them. Not through courage. Not through intelligence. Not through sacrifice. Some losses cannot be prevented. This truth wounds him more than monster claws ever could. Then comes the dream that night. He stands on a shoreline scattered with 6 broken oars. Nothing else, only 6 oars. Athena's voice returns. Calm as always. Can you lead without controlling everything? A pause. Can you endure what cannot be solved? He wakes before dawn. The questions linger. They strike at the core of his character. Odysseus has spent his life mastering variables, predicting outcomes, controlling damage. Yet the deeper wisdom emerging now is harsher. Maturity is not mastering all outcomes. It is enduring unavoidable loss without losing oneself. This is the lesson Scylla teaches. Not strategy, acceptance. And still suffering is not finished. Because prophecy waits ahead, Tiresias's warning remains unresolved. An island of sacred cattle lies somewhere before them. The men are hungry, exhausted, worn down by grief. And hunger makes discipline fragile. Odysseus knows this. Yet even now, after monsters and death, he still underestimates one danger above all. Desperation inside ordinary men. The next catastrophe will not come from gods alone. It will come from human weakness, and from one more failure of leadership. After Scylla, exhaustion settles over the survivors like cold ash. Too many men are gone. Too many omens fulfilled. Too many warnings proven true. Hunger sharpens tempers. Grief erodes discipline. The ship still moves, but morale has become fragile, stretched thin by fear and deprivation. Odysseus feels this instability immediately. Leadership now requires more than command. It requires holding together men whose faith is steadily collapsing. Ahead lies the island Tiresias warned about, the island of Helios' sacred cattle. Odysseus remembers every word of the prophecy. Do not touch them, not under any circumstance. The warning had been absolute. He repeats it to his crew with unusual force. His voice carries urgency stronger than fear. Avoid the cattle, endure hunger, survive, keep moving. But nature intervenes. Storms trap them. Days become weeks. Supplies vanish. Hunger becomes pain. Then delirium. Ancient people understood hunger as moral pressure, not merely physical suffering. Starvation reshapes judgment. Nobility becomes harder to sustain when the body begins consuming itself. Odysseus knows this, yet even he underestimates how desperation corrodes obedience. One day, exhausted beyond reason, he withdraws to pray. This detail matters. He leaves, only briefly, but briefly becomes enough. Sleep overtakes him. Again, a recurring pattern. Fatigue opening catastrophe. While he sleeps, his men break. Led by desperation, they slaughter the sacred cattle. Meat roasts, fat burns, smoke rises. The forbidden act is complete. When Odysseus wakes, the smell hits first. Cooked flesh, burning fat, sacrilege. He knows instantly. The prophecy has been broken. Shock becomes rage, then horror. Not because of anger alone, because certainty arrives. The men have doomed themselves. Some later traditions describe eerie signs during the feast. Hides crawling, meat moving, cattle lowing even after death. Whether literal miracle or symbolic embellishment, the meaning remains clear. Divine order has been violated. Punishment is certain. The storm finally breaks. They sail. Brief hope returns. Then the sky darkens unnaturally. Thunder splits heaven. Lightning falls. Zeus acts. The ship explodes beneath divine force. Wood shatters. Masts snap. Men vanish into screaming sea. Years of companionship end in seconds. Odysseus clings to wreckage as waves consume everything. Everything. Every companion. Every remaining crewman. Gone. He is alone. Completely. This is the true breaking point of his life. For so long, suffering remained shared. Even through grief, he still led men, still carried responsibility outward. Now leadership itself is stripped away. No crew to command, no voices to answer, no decisions to coordinate. Only survival, only self. He drifts. Days blur, salt cracks skin, sunburns, thirst gnaws. Sleep comes in fractured bursts. Time loses shape. Without companions, identity begins eroding. Humans understand themselves partly through others. Alone long enough, even self-perception distorts. Then the sea brings him to an island. Calypso's island, Ogygia, beautiful beyond reason. Soft shores, green forests, clear water, birdsong, perfumed air. After years of death, it feels unreal. Like mercy or illusion, Calypso finds him near death and saves him. She heals his wounds, restores his strength, feeds him, shelters him. Her island offers abundance without struggle. No storms reach here. No armies march. No hunger threatens. Time itself feels softened. At first, this seems salvation. Then years pass. 8 years. 8. This duration matters because it reveals something psychologically devastating. Odysseus is not chained in iron. His prison is comfort. This is why Calypso represents his deepest emotional trial. Polyphemus threatened his body. Sirens threatened desire for knowledge. Calypso threatens purpose. She offers something almost impossible to refuse. Safety, love, immortality. Ancient tradition often emphasizes her offer clearly. Stay with her and he may live forever. No aging, no death, no further suffering. Think about that. A man battered by war monsters storms grief, and divine punishment is offered escape from mortality itself. Many would accept. Perhaps most. Odysseus does not. This choice reveals the deepest truth about him. He wants home more than immortality. That sounds romantic. It is deeper than romance. So if home means limitation, mortality, aging, loss, routine, imperfection, Penelope growing older, Telemachus changed, Ithaca weathered by time. To choose home is to choose finite life over eternal comfort. That choice is profoundly human and profoundly meaningful. Yet refusing Calypso is not simple. Some traditions portray genuine affection between them. This complicates everything. Calypso is not merely villain or captor. She loves him, perhaps possessively, perhaps sincerely. Both may be true. She sees his strength, intelligence, sorrow. She wants him to stay. Odysseus experiences guilt, compassion, fatigue, longing, and endless loneliness. This loneliness becomes the emotional center of the section. Because isolation now reaches maximum intensity. No crew, no allies, no war, no leadership, only waiting. Day after day he walks to the shore. Ancient poets preserve this image with extraordinary tenderness. Odysseus sitting beside the sea, looking west, crying, not shouting, not raging, quietly grieving. This may be the most human image in all his myth. Not hero, not strategist, not king, just a tired man sitting by water missing home. He weeps for ordinary things. The sound of his own hearth, Penelope's voice, his son's face, olive trees in wind, stone beneath familiar feet. He now understands something fully. Home was never just place. It was identity. Without home, he survives. But he does not feel whole. Years pass like this. Then comes divine intervention. Athena finally acts decisively. She petitions the gods, arguing Odysseus has suffered enough. At last, even Zeus agrees. Hermes is sent to Ogygia. Calypso receives the command. Release him. Her reaction matters. She is furious not only from jealousy, but from cosmic injustice. Some traditions preserve her complaint that male gods freely pursue mortal lovers, yet goddesses are condemned for doing the same. Scholars often note how unusually sharp and modern this argument feels. Still, divine command stands. She must let him go. Calypso helps him build a raft. Wood is cut. Tools strike timber. Sails prepared. The final departure approaches. Before leaving, Odysseus dreams once more. He stands on Ithaca. No distance. No sea between. Penelope approaches slowly. Telemachus beside her. Athena speaks one final time before silence. You have lost nearly everything. A pause. Now answer this. Another pause. Who are you without suffering? He wakes shaken. The question cuts deeper than expected. For years, suffering defined him. Survivor, exile, wanderer. What happens if suffering ends? Who remains? Odysseus boards the raft. The sea awaits again. Home is closer than ever. Yet one final truth has emerged from Calypso's island. His greatest loneliness was never physical isolation. It was separation from the self he once was. Now the voyage enters its final stage. Ithaca waits. But return does not guarantee restoration. Home may welcome him, or test him one final time. After leaving the island of Calypso, Odysseus sails with a kind of fragile hope he has not allowed himself in years. Home is no longer abstract memory. It has direction again. Distance feels measurable. Every wave now carries possibility. The raft creaks beneath him. Salt dries across weathered skin. Wind presses the sail. For the first time in ages, the horizon feels less like prison and more like promise. But promises and fate rarely travel smoothly together. Poseidon sees him. The god's anger has not cooled, not even after years. This matters because divine wrath in Greek myth often reflects something deeply human, wounded pride that refuses closure. Odysseus's greatest flaw created an enemy who mirrors that flaw. Pride cursed him. Pride pursues him. Poseidon raises the sea. The storm that follows feels almost personal. Waves rise like collapsing walls. Wind screams through rigging. The raft twists violently. Foam blinds him. Wood splinters. Cold water slams his body again and again. No crew remains to help. No commands can be shouted. No leadership matters now. Only endurance. This final storm becomes symbolic. The sea is stripping away the last remnants of who he was. King, commander, strategist, hero. Everything reduces to one exhausted mortal fighting breath by breath. At last, with divine assistance from forces beyond Poseidon's control, Odysseus survives. Half drowned, broken, barely conscious, he reaches land. Not Ithaca, not yet. The island of the Phaeacians. Ancient storytellers treat the Phaeacians strangely. They exist somewhere between mortal civilization and fairy tale threshold. Exceptional sailors, refined hosts, almost dreamlike in hospitality. Their kingdom feels like the last bridge between myth and home. Here, Odysseus receives something he has not felt in a long time. Recognition without immediate danger. He is found sheltered and eventually welcomed into royal halls. Warm fires burn. Clean garments replace salt-crusted rags. Food returns. Music returns. Human conversation returns. The contrast is almost overwhelming. Then something profound happens. He tells his story. The long story. Troy, Cyclops, Circe, underworld, sirens, Calypso, everything. Narration becomes healing. This matters psychologically. Trauma often fragments memory. By telling the journey from beginning to end, Odysseus reclaims coherence. Suffering stops being random torment and becomes narrative. Meaning begins emerging from chaos. And yet even while speaking, he fears something. What if home no longer exists as memory preserved it? This fear has grown quietly for years. The longer absence lasts, the more dangerous return becomes. Because memory freezes, reality changes. At last, the Phaeacians offer passage home. Real passage. Safe passage. They carry him while he sleeps. That detail feels poetic. After decades of struggle, the final distance is crossed not through effort but surrender. He sleeps and wakes. On Ithaca, at first he does not recognize it. This detail surprises many listeners, but it makes deep emotional sense. 20 years have passed. 20. Landscapes change. Trees grow. Shorelines feel unfamiliar. Memory distorts. Trauma alters perception. Odysseus opens his eyes to rocky earth, olive trees, sea wind. Bird calls, familiar stone. Yet uncertainty remains. Is this real? Dream. Illusion. After years of deception and enchantment, trust in perception itself has weakened. Then she appears. Athena, not as distant voice, present, clear. She reveals the truth. He is home. Ithaca, at last. The moment should bring immediate relief. It does not fully, because Athena brings devastating news. His home is occupied. Suitors have invaded his palace. Noble men from across nearby islands consume his wealth, pressure Penelope to remarry, and assume Odysseus is dead. They feast in his hall, waste his livestock, drink his wine, mock his absence. His son Telemachus has grown into manhood under threat. Odysseus stands silent. The truth lands harder than expected. He returned, yet cannot simply go home. This is the final irony of his journey. Arrival is not restoration. Home itself has become contested territory. Athena studies him carefully. This moment matters because it reveals his transformation. The younger Odysseus might have rushed forward in fury. The man standing here does not. He listens, processes, waits. Patience has matured from tactic into wisdom. Athena gives him disguise. She transforms him into an old beggar-weathered skin, worn clothes-bent posture. The symbolism is brilliant. To reclaim home, Odysseus must first surrender visible identity. He cannot return as king immediately. He must return through humility. This becomes his final great test. Not strength, restraint. Can he endure seeing his own home corrupted without reacting too soon? Can he observe before striking? Can he control rage? These questions matter because home does not simply reward return. It examines who returned. Odysseus begins moving through Ithaca unseen. Every step hurts in strange ways. Familiar paths now feel layered with memory. Stones he once crossed daily now feel sacred. Olive trees seem older. Air smells achingly familiar, dust sea salt herbs warmed by sunlight. Home assaults the senses. Emotion rises. He suppresses it, still watching, still calculating, yet something inside him trembles. Because he realizes a painful truth. He spent 20 years dreaming of return. Now return demands a new identity. He is not the man who left. This is unavoidable. War changed him. Loss changed him. Loneliness changed him. Suffering carved him. And now comes Athena's final challenge. Not reaching home. Living in it again. That night disguised and hidden Odysseus dreams. No monsters. No storms. No gods. Only a hearth. Burning quietly. Athena speaks once more. Softly now. Almost gently. You have returned. A pause. But can you belong? He wakes before dawn. The question remains. And within the palace, the men consuming his home laugh loudly, unaware that the beggar nearing their gates is the very king they have replaced. The reckoning is close. Very close. But first, Odysseus must endure the cruelest challenge of all. Walking through his own home as a stranger. Dawn rises slowly over Ithaca, washing stone walls in pale gold. The sea glitters beyond the cliffs, exactly as it did 20 years ago, yet nothing feels the same. Odysseus walks toward his palace with bent shoulders and worn clothing disguised by Athena as an old beggar. Dust clings to his feet, his beard hangs wild, his back appears curved with age. No trace remains of the king who left for Troy. And that is the point. Identity has been stripped to essence. No title, no armor, no reputation. Only perception. This may be the most psychologically difficult stage of his journey because for the first time he must witness his life from outside. He is present, yet unrecognized. He sees what absence has done. He sees who remained loyal, who adapted, who decayed, who waited. Few experiences wound more deeply than becoming invisible inside your own home. Before reaching the palace, he encounters his son, Telemachus. The emotional weight of this meeting is immense. The infant Odysseus once held is gone. In his place stands a young man shaped by uncertainty, pressure, and incomplete inheritance. Telemachus has grown under shadow without father, surrounded by predatory suitors, forced into adulthood without clear guidance. Odysseus studies him quietly, strength in posture, intelligence in the eyes, but also tension, loneliness, anger held beneath discipline. The father sees himself. And something different. Telemachus has inherited not only blood, but absence. That realization hurts. Ancient traditions preserve this reunion as one of recognition and revelation guided by Athena. At last the disguise is lifted before Telemachus. Father and son face one another. Disbelief comes first, then awe, then emotion too large for language. Telemachus struggles to accept what stands before him. For 20 years Odysseus existed as story, hope, rumor, memory. Now flesh replaces myth. The impossible becomes real. Odysseus embraces his son. At last. Solid, warm. Not shadow, not dream. This embrace matters because it reverses the underworld's deepest pain. He could not hold his mother. He can hold his son. Life still offers contact. Presence still matters. Yet joy carries grief, because every reunion reveals what was lost. 20 years cannot be reclaimed. No cleverness restores childhood. No heroism returns. Missed birthdays, missed lessons, missed growth. Odysseus feels that loss intensely. So does Telemachus. Still, there is little time for sentiment. The suitors remain. Plans must form. Father and son begin preparing together. This partnership becomes symbolic. Odysseus no longer carries everything alone. That is important. His greatest failures often came from prideful isolation. Now strategy becomes shared. Trust returns. The lone survivor becomes collaborator again. Growth is visible. They plan carefully. Weapons hidden. Allies identified. Timing controlled. The old strategist returns, but changed. Less arrogant, more patient, more precise. Then comes the palace. Odysseus enters as beggar and sees the desecration. The sight lands like physical impact. Men laugh loudly at tables built by his household. Wine spills across floors. Servants move anxiously between demands. Meat roasts wastefully. Livestock slaughtered from his herds feeds gluttony. His wealth, years of labor, inheritance, stewardship is consumed casually by men who assume him dead. Rage rises instantly, raw, violent. He almost breaks disguise. Almost. This is the test. Restraint, not strength. Rage controlled becomes power. Rage unleashed too early becomes ruin. He endures mockery, insults, thrown scraps, humiliation. Suitors ridicule the beggar openly. Some shove him, some laugh at his appearance, others weaponize cruelty for amusement. One hurls a stool, blood runs. Odysseus takes it. This restraint may be harder than facing monsters, because humiliation attacks pride directly, and pride has always been his deepest vulnerability. Yet he does not react, not outwardly. This reveals how profoundly he has changed. The man who once shouted his name at Polyphemus now swallows insult in silence. That transformation matters. Suffering has taught discipline pride never could. Then he sees her, Penelope. Time stops, years collapse. She enters the hall with quiet authority, and Odysseus feels the full weight of 20 lost years. Penelope is older now, naturally, grace deepened by endurance, beauty altered by time, but not diminished. If anything, sorrow has refined her into something stronger. She carries exhaustion and intelligence in equal measure. Most striking is her composure. She has survived 20 years of uncertainty without surrendering herself. That alone reveals extraordinary strength. Odysseus watches silently. Emotion becomes almost unbearable. He wants to run to her, reveal everything, end suffering, but wisdom restrains him. Not yet. Penelope notices the beggar. Of course she does. Her perception remains sharp. She requests conversation. This scene becomes one of the most emotionally complex in all myth. Husband and wife speak across disguise. Recognition hovers near, yet remains unresolved. Penelope questions the stranger about Odysseus. Is he alive? Has anyone seen him? Will he return? Odysseus answers carefully. Truth wrapped in concealment. A familiar pattern, yet something has changed. His lies hurt now. Not because deception is new, because intimacy makes deception costly. He sees Penelope's grief directly and understands the emotional price of concealment. Penelope reveals her own strategy. She delayed remarriage through weaving and unweaving a burial shroud, buying time through intelligence. Odysseus feels something profound. Recognition. She became like him, strategic, patient, cunning for survival. Their bond feels deeper than romance now. They are mirrors. Two minds enduring through intelligence. Two souls surviving through restraint. Then comes one final sign. An old dog lies nearby. Argos. Aged. Weak. Neglected. Once strong hunting companion now discarded near refuse. No one notices him, except Odysseus and Argos. The dog lifts his head, sees the beggar, knows. No disguise fools him. Recognition flashes instantly. Tail moves weakly. Eyes soften. Then Argos dies, quietly, at peace. The moment devastates Odysseus. He cannot even mourn openly. But symbolically, the scene cuts deep. Animals often recognize essence beyond appearance. Argos sees what humans miss. The king returned, at last. The faithful waited until the end. That night, Odysseus dreams beside the palace. No storm, no monster. Only a bow resting on stone. Athena's voice returns. This is the final threshold. A pause. Justice and vengeance are not the same. He wakes troubled, because the question now sharpens. What awaits tomorrow? Justice or revenge? The answer will define his legacy. Inside the palace, the suitors continue feasting. They do not yet understand. The beggar they mocked, the old man they struck, the stranger they dismissed, is the storm they never saw coming. And tomorrow, a bow will decide everything. Morning arrives with strange stillness. Even the air inside the palace feels charged, as though the stone itself senses approaching violence. Servants move more quietly than usual. The suitors continue eating, laughing, boasting, unaware that fate has already entered the hall disguised as a beggar. Sunlight spills across polished floors. Dust turns gold in narrow beams. Wine catches light in bronze cups. Everything appears ordinary. Nothing is ordinary. Penelope has reached her limit. 20 years of waiting, 20 years of pressure, 20 years of uncertainty. She announces a final test. Whoever can string Odysseus's bow and shoot an arrow cleanly through 12 axe heads shall win her hand. At first, the suitors react with confidence. Why would they not? They are nobles, hunters, warriors, men accustomed to strength and competition. A bow test seems straightforward. They misunderstand entirely. This is not merely a contest of force. It is a test of identity. Odysseus's bow is no ordinary weapon. Ancient tradition emphasizes its exceptional difficulty. The bow requires not only strength, but familiarity, precision, and practice control. It belongs to the man who mastered tension, literal and symbolic. That symbolism matters. A bow works through restraint. Too little force and nothing happens. Too much uncontrolled force and aim collapses. Perfect tension creates perfect release. No symbol fits Odysseus better. The contest begins. One by one, the suitors try. They fail. Some cannot even bend the bow. Others strain until their hands tremble. Sweat forms. Laughter gradually fades. Confidence becomes embarrassment. This failure carries deeper meaning. The men occupying Odysseus's home possess appetite, entitlement, and arrogance. They lack discipline. They consume. They demand. They take. But they do not understand earned mastery. Strength without discipline fails. Odysseus watches silently. Years of wandering, suffering, humiliation, and restraint have led to this hall, this morning, this test. Then he speaks. Calmly, the beggar asked to try. The hall erupts in laughter. Mockery returns instantly. A beggar, this old man, absurd, insulting. Some suitors object violently. They fear symbolic humiliation even before it happens. Others allow it for amusement. Penelope, interestingly, does not dismiss him. That detail matters. Perhaps intuition stirs. Perhaps something deeper recognizes pattern. At last, the bow reaches his hands. Silence spreads. Odysseus touches the wood. And something extraordinary happens. Not spectacle, recognition. The bow feels familiar beneath his fingers. Smooth where years of use polished grip. Slight imperfections known only to long habit. The sensation almost overwhelms him. After decades of displacement, his hands touch an object inseparable from former identity. Home becomes tactile, real. He inspects the bow like a musician tuning an old instrument. Calm, precise, no wasted movement. Then he strings it effortlessly. The sound rings through the hall, a sharp musical snap. Silence deepens. The sound alone changes everything. The laughter dies. Ancient storytellers compare the motion to a skilled singer tightening a stringed instrument. That comparison is revealing. Odysseus is not forcing power through violence. He's restoring harmony through mastery. Then he knocks the arrow, draws, releases. The arrow flies cleanly through all 12 axe heads. Perfect. No hesitation. No correction. Pure precision. The test ends. So does disguise. Athena moves. The transformation comes swiftly. Strength returns visibly. The beggar vanishes. The king stands revealed. Odysseus has returned. Shock freezes the hall. No one moves. No one breathes. Disbelief collides with terror. Then Odysseus speaks. His words are calm. Too calm. That calm is more frightening than rage. Because rage burns hot. Cold justice feels inevitable. The first arrow kills instantly. One suitor falls before full comprehension arrives. Chaos erupts. Tables overturn. Wine spills. Bronze crashes. Men scramble for weapons. Too late. Odysseus and Telemachus move into position. Loyal servants join. Hidden weapons are retrieved. Escape routes collapse. The slaughter begins. This is the most violent scene in Odysseus's life yet. Emotionally, it is more complicated than revenge fantasy. Ancient audiences understood this as reckoning, but they also recognized danger. Violence once unleashed rarely remains clean. Odysseus fights with terrifying efficiency. Years of war return instantly. No hesitation, no wasted movement. Precision replaces emotion. Arrow after arrow, spear after spear. Men fall. The suitors plead, beg, offer compensation. Gold, livestock, restitution. Odysseus refuses. Why? Because this is no longer about stolen property alone. They violated sacred hospitality, threatened his son, tormented his wife, consumed his home, mocked divine order. In Greek moral logic, they crossed multiple sacred boundaries. Still a troubling question remains. Where does justice end? Where does vengeance begin? Athena's warning echoes. Justice and vengeance are not the same. As blood spreads across the hall, that distinction blurs. Odysseus feels something dangerous awakening, not merely righteous fury, satisfaction. This unsettles the deeper part of him, because he recognizes the sensation, war returning, the cold efficiency Troy demanded, the self forged in survival. For a moment, the old danger resurfaces, violence becoming identity. This is the final internal battle. Can he stop once justice is complete? Or has suffering made destruction too easy? The battle ends. Bodies lie across stone floors. Silence returns. Heavy, metallic. The smell of blood mixes with smoke and spilled wine. Odysseus stands motionless, breathing hard, alive, victorious, and suddenly empty. This surprises him. He expected triumph, relief, release. Instead, exhaustion floods in, because vengeance, even justified vengeance, cannot restore lost years. It cannot erase grief. It cannot return childhood to Telemachus. It cannot restore youth to Penelope. It cannot undo 20 years. Violence solved a problem. It did not heal a life. That realization marks the final collapse of youthful illusion. No victory fully restores what time takes. Then comes the true test. Not combat, recognition. Penelope remains cautious. She does not rush into his arms. This shocks many listeners, but psychologically it is brilliant. She has survived through skepticism and intelligence. A sudden claim cannot dissolve 20 years of uncertainty. Gods disguise, men deceive. Hope itself can become trap. She tests him. One final test. Their bed. She orders servants to move the marriage bed. Odysseus reacts instantly. Impossible. The bed cannot be moved. He built it himself around a living olive tree rooted in the earth. Only he and Penelope know this truth. The moment reveals everything. Penelope breaks. Recognition becomes certainty. At last, no disguise, no lie, no test, only truth. She runs to him, and this time nothing separates them. No sea, no gods, no war, no disguise, only embrace. Solid, warm, real. The reunion fulfills the emotional promise of the entire epic. Not conquest, not glory, return. Yet even in reunion, peace remains unfinished. Outside the palace, families of the dead will soon demand blood. Ithaca is not healed, only changed. Odysseus has reclaimed home. Now he must do something harder than winning it back. He must learn how to live in peace. After the blood has been washed from stone, silence becomes the loudest presence in the palace. The laughter of the suitors is gone. The crash of battle has ended. Only smaller sounds remain now. Water poured into bronze basins. Sand scattered to absorb blood. Cloth dragged across floors. Quiet footsteps in long corridors. Outside, the sea continues its endless rhythm, indifferent to human fury. Waves strike the shore as they did before Troy, before exile, before Odysseus was born. That indifference feels strangely comforting, because life continues, even after violence. Odysseus stands in the hall he fought to reclaim and feels a truth many warriors discover too late. The battle is over. The war inside is not. This is the hidden difficulty of return. People often imagine peace as the absence of conflict. In reality, peace demands new discipline. War teaches hypervigilance, suspicion, immediate reaction. Those habits save lives during danger. They become burdens during peace. Odysseus now carries decades of survival instinct into a place that requires softness. That transition is difficult. He notices it almost immediately. Every unexpected sound draws attention. Every movement at the edge of vision triggers evaluation. Every silence invites suspicion. His mind still scans for threats before comfort. The strategist remains active, even while the husband longs to rest. Penelope notices. Of course she does. She has always noticed what others miss. Penelope understands something essential about reunion. Love alone does not erase distance. 20 years created invisible separations. No embrace can instantly dissolve. They must learn each other again. This truth feels deeply human. People often romanticize reunion as restoration. Real reunion includes rediscovery. Odysseus and Penelope spend long hours talking. Not heroic speeches. Not dramatic declarations. Quiet conversations. Broken memories. Shared grief. Missing years pieced together through language. Penelope speaks of the suitors of pressure manipulation, exhaustion, and strategy. She recounts weaving by day and undoing by night. Delay became survival. Intelligence became shield. Odysseus listens with growing awe. He had always admired her. Now he understands her more fully. She did not merely wait. She fought differently than he did. No spears, no ships, no monsters. Yet endurance of uncertainty requires extraordinary strength. This realization transforms his understanding of heroism. Heroism is not only conquest. Sometimes heroism is sustained patience. Sometimes survival itself becomes resistance. That insight matures him further. Then there is Telemachus. Father and son now share space as men, not memory and absence. This creates strange tension alongside love. Telemachus respects his father deeply, but admiration alone cannot instantly create familiarity. He grew without daily guidance. His habits formed independently. His emotional scars formed in absence. Odysseus realizes something painful. He cannot simply step into the role of father he missed. That role must be rebuilt. Trust must grow. Presence must replace mythology. This requires humility, and humility was not always his strength. Yet now he learns. He listens more, commands less, a profound shift. The man who once carried every burden alone begins allowing relationships to share weight. Growth becomes visible. Still, peace remains fragile. News spreads quickly across Ithaca. The suitors are dead. Families mourn. Fathers rage. Brothers demand justice. In honor-based societies, blood rarely ends with one act. Revenge creates cycles. One death demands another. The danger is obvious. Odysseus has removed immediate threat, but broader conflict now brews. This is Athena's warning returning. Justice and vengeance are not the same. The families of the slain gather. Weapons rise. Anger spreads. Civil conflict threatens. Odysseus prepares for another fight. Of course he does. Old instincts return easily. Armor, positioning, assessment. The familiar machinery of survival awakens. Yet something inside resists. He feels exhaustion deeper than physical fatigue. He has spent too much of life fighting. War, monsters, storms, suitors. Must everything end in violence? This question reveals his final transformation. The younger Odysseus asked, "How do I win?" The older Odysseus asks, "What ends suffering?" These are not the same question. Ancient tradition offers different endings here. Some versions emphasize renewed combat. Others stress divine intervention, restoring peace. Historians continue debating which endings reflect older oral traditions, but symbolically one conclusion dominates. Violence alone cannot complete Odysseus's journey. Wisdom must. As tensions peak, Athena intervenes, not with spectacle meant to glorify power, with command. Stop! Enough! The message feels cosmic and intimate at once. Enough blood, enough pride, enough cycles. Peace must begin somewhere. Someone must stop first. That lesson reaches Odysseus deeply, because pride once prevented him from stopping. Pride made him reveal his name to Polyphemus. Pride fed conflict. Humility now ends it. This is the arc completing. He lowers violence. He accepts peace, not because enemies vanish, because wisdom finally outranks ego. That shift defines his legacy more than any battle. Over time, Ithaca slowly settles. Ritual cleansing restores sacred order to the palace. Fires burn again not for defense, but for meals. Servants laugh cautiously, then more freely. Music returns. Domestic rhythms rebuild. Ordinary life reappears. And Odysseus discovers something unexpected. Ordinary life feels miraculous. Morning bread, warm oil, sea breeze through open windows. Penelope weaving nearby. Telemachus speaking of daily matters. Simple things. For decades he chased survival through extraordinary trials. Now the ordinary becomes sacred. This may be his greatest wisdom. The life he once feared losing becomes more precious, precisely because it is ordinary. No glory required, no epic struggle, just presence. Yet scars remain. Some nights he wakes suddenly. Storms return in dreams. Voices of the dead rise. Lost companions call from dark water. Troy burns again. Trauma does not vanish because peace arrives. But something changes. He no longer carries it alone. Penelope knows. Telemachus learns. Shared burden becomes lighter burden. This may be the deepest healing of all. Connection. At last, Odysseus begins understanding what the journey was truly about. Not proving cleverness. Not defeating enemies. Not surviving monsters. Learning what matters after survival. Love. Presence. Humility. Home. Still one final question remains. Why does humanity remember him so powerfully across thousands of years? Not because he was strongest, not because he was purest. Something else explains his endurance. And in the quiet years that follow, as sea winds move gently through Ithaca's olive groves, the answer slowly reveals itself. Years pass and the storms eventually grow quieter. Not because the sea changes, the sea remains what it has always been. Vast, indifferent, beautiful, merciless. But something within Odysseus changes at last. The constant tension that once defined him begins to soften. Age does what war could not. It slows reflex into reflection. It turns urgency into perspective. It teaches that not every silence hides danger. And so in the later years of his life, you find Odysseus not on battlefields, but in smaller moments. Walking olive groves beneath early light, standing above Ithaca's cliffs while gulls circle in salt-heavy air, sitting beside Penelope near the evening fire while shadows stretch across stone walls, listening to Telemachus speak not as a boy seeking approval, but as a man carrying his own judgment. These scenes matter because they complete the truth of his life. The world remembers Odysseus for extraordinary things. The Trojan horse, the Cyclops, the sirens, the underworld, the long voyage across impossible seas. Those stories survive because they are dramatic. They glitter in memory. They satisfy the human love of legend. But legend alone does not explain endurance. Many heroes performed astonishing feats. Few remained so emotionally alive across millennia. Why? Because Odysseus is remembered not merely as a hero. He is remembered as a human being. That distinction matters. Achilles represents overwhelming greatness. You admire him, perhaps fear him, but Odysseus feels closer, uncomfortably close. You recognize him. His strengths feel familiar. So do his flaws. He is brilliant but prideful, loving but secretive, resourceful but controlling, brave yet afraid, wise yet capable of foolishness. He survives not because he transcends human weakness. He survives while carrying it. That is why his story endures. He becomes an archetype of the struggling self, the mind trying to master chaos, the heart longing for home, the the person repeatedly learning that intelligence alone cannot solve everything. Ancient Greeks understood this deeply. In temples, festivals, and oral tradition, Odysseus came to symbolize more than a king returning home. He symbolized nostos, the return. But nostos meant more than physical return. It carried emotional, spiritual, and existential meaning. What does it mean to return? Return to home, return to identity, return to self. This is the true heart of his myth. Because the deepest journey was never geographic, it was internal. The prophecies spoken beneath olive trees proved true in every possible way. He escaped monsters. He survived storms. He endured kings. And the hardest thing he faced was himself. His pride cursed him. His need for control isolated him. His temptation toward delay prolonged suffering. His cleverness saved him repeatedly, yet also created catastrophe. Again and again, his inner flaws shaped outer fate. This is why the gods in his story feel so psychologically rich. Poseidon was not only external wrath, he became the force of consequence, the part of reality that answers arrogance. Athena was not only divine helper, she became disciplined wisdom, the voice urging clarity, restraint, and perspective. Calypso embodied seductive escape. Circe embodied transformative temptation. Each monster reflected something human. Each god illuminated inner conflict. Perhaps this explains why modern readers still feel him breathing beneath ancient poetry. His enemies changed. Human nature did not. Even the final years of Odysseus remain uncertain. Ancient traditions disagree. Some say he ruled peacefully until old age. Some claim later journeys still awaited him, fulfilling additional prophecy. Another version tells of death arriving through tragedy, involving family recognition and fate's final irony. Historians continue to debate which traditions preserve older memory and which emerged later. The uncertainty feels appropriate. Not every ending must be fixed. Some legends remain partially open because mystery serves memory, and perhaps that is fitting for Odysseus. He was never simple enough for one ending, yet whatever version you choose, one truth remains. He dies, not as monster, not as legend, as mortal. This matters, because mortality gives meaning to everything before it. If Odysseus had accepted immortality from Calypso, much of his story's emotional power would vanish. His greatness lies partly in refusal. He chose mortal love over endless existence, finite home over eternal comfort, imperfect life over timeless escape. That choice may be his greatest victory. Not Troy, not survival. That choice, to accept mortality, to choose finite love, to return home, knowing home itself is temporary. As night falls over Ithaca, in his final years, imagine him sitting alone, one last time near the shore. The same sea still breathes against black stone. Salt hangs in cool air. Stars scatter across the sky exactly as they did when he was young. Waves rise, break, withdraw, rise again. The sea remembers everything. It remembers the boy watching storms from cliffs. It remembers the king leaving for Troy. It remembers the proud man shouting his name at a blinded Cyclops. It remembers the grieving husband crying on distant shores. It remembers the wanderer who crossed darkness to return. And perhaps, at last, Odysseus understands something simple and profound. Home was never guaranteed. Home was always gift. So many spend life believing the goal is victory. Odysseus learned otherwise. The goal is return. Return to what matters. Return to who you are beneath masks, titles, victories, and wounds. Return to love. Return to presence. Return to the hearth. And maybe that is why his story still speaks so softly across thousands of years. Because all of us wander. All of us lose ourselves. All of us, in one way or another, search for home. Tonight, as the sea grows quieter and the sacred fires burn low, you leave Odysseus where he always belonged. Not in battle. Not in glory, at home, under stars, at peace at last.